across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, my thanks to the brilliant Julia Hartley-Brewer. Mark Dolan in for Ian Collins this week and next week. It's exactly 3 minutes past 1. I hope you're having an excellent and productive Thursday. Breaking this afternoon, anger grows in Epsom as the police failed to reveal details of alleged suspects linked to a shocking attack on a local woman. So should the authorities be forced to reveal the ethnicity and background of alleged suspects? Let me know your thoughts. Also today, is Keir Starmer losing the plot as he has an angry row with the Speaker of the House of Commons, bashing his fist on the table? Is the pressure getting to the PM? Donald Trump's extraordinary row with the Pope continues. We'll hear from a leading cleric who backs the president. Meanwhile, the fallout from a BBC investigation into crooked human rights lawyers coaching asylum seekers into gaming the system to stay in Britain continues. And it's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just a moment. Got some great guests as well. Edwina Curry, Sir Michael Fabricant. Some of the biggest names in media and politics are joining us for this conversation. But most importantly, I want to hear your views. Now, my phone number is 0344 499 1000, and Faith is on the phones today. You can text us. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note as well. We love a voice note because we know you're busy. Or, of course, you can communicate via that phone in. So, look, let's book your places on the show. My question to you this afternoon is very clear. With net zero, with woke policing, with the demonisation of our great history, with open borders, with wokery in our public institutions, have the establishment broken Britain? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, so, let's talk. Of course, you can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online. Lovely Sam is our engineer today. Finally, we've got a professional in the building. I've got to say, I've never sounded better. Finley is the boss. He's cracking the whip. He rules with an iron fist, I'll tell you. And Faith is taking your calls. Directing the TV output, the brilliant Luke, who, I've got to say, has got my best angle. So much to get through. Let's kick off, as always, with Dolan's Dispatch. You could be forgiven for thinking that they hate us. The entire establishment, made up of the governing class and all of the traditional main parties, the public sector, of course, the corporations, are ancient institutions. They seem to be at war against the British people and at odds with the British national interest. The establishment, for example, have backed the insane pursuit of net zero, which has made life a misery for ordinary Brits who feel like they've got to take out a mortgage just to heat their homes, or indeed to fill up their cars with petrol. And I would appreciate it if Rachel from Accounts, and I know she hates being called Rachel from Accounts, that's why I'm going to call her Rachel from Accounts. I'd appreciate it if the Chancellor doesn't blame the war in Iran. The cost of fuel has been eye-watering for years now. We've had zero growth and high inflation long before the Iran war was a twinkle in Donald Trump's eye. The insane establishment-backed ideology of net zero, just as an example of how the establishment think. Net zero has crippled our industries, effectively de-industrialising the United Kingdom, a country that gave the world Rolls-Royce, Bentley and Dyson. And maybe I could mention, am I allowed to mention this, Finley? Can I mention that we gave the world the Industrial Revolution? The country that gifted the world the Industrial Revolution de-industrialises based upon an insane ideology that I would argue isn't even backed up by science. It's the establishment-backed net zero policies which have not just provoked inflation, which is a tax on everyone, especially the poor. It's threatened our energy supply which has implications for our national security. If we are at war, and as a result of net zero, good luck, folks. Good luck having net zero when you're at war. Are Iran doing net zero? Are China or Russia doing net zero? Do me a favour. So we're poorer, making fewer things, and are less safe thanks to the establishment. It is the establishment and Labour and the Tories and the Lib Dems, egged on by the media, who have pursued a policy of open borders. With a rise in the population of this country of 10.6 million people since 2000. Let that sink in. 10.6 million people since 2000. That is almost 20%. No one voted for it. And illegal boat crossings running to 50k a year. Now, if you call out the dangers of mass uncontrolled migration, the impact on the economy, the impact on our infrastructure, school places, GP appointments, housing, not to mention integration and men from cultures that detest and have contempt for women, well, then you're a bad person and far right, obviously. And the madness of political correctness, all backed by the establishment, is apparently progress. So, for example, if you think that someone with testicles is a man, you are the enemy. If you love your country, you're an extremist. It goes on, which is why I had to spit my tea out when I discovered that it was the very pillar of the leftist, woke, progressive establishment, the BBC no less, who for once did the right thing and indulged in some journalism, revealing that there are lawyers complicit in people who shouldn't be in this country staying. Now, the BBC has uncovered what it describes as a dark shadow industry of immigration advisors and legal operators helping migrants make false claims to stay in Britain. According to the investigation, some of these people were allegedly coaching clients to pretend to be gay in order to strengthen asylum cases, charging thousands of pounds to help construct those claims. The reporting says this was not just about vague advice. It allegedly involved helping people build a story. That's right, folks. Put together a story, assembling supporting material, all of which was fake and confected, and present themselves as member of a persecuted group in order to avoid removal from the country. Follow-up coverage by the BBC Sting says one advisor was accused of offering fake evidence and support material, while others were said to be coaching applicants throughout the whole process. They've also been encouraging these people to pretend that they've been victims of domestic abuse. The list goes on. You couldn't make it up, folks, and well done to the BBC for calling this out. All of this is an example of the establishment, because it is the woke lefty lawyers, it is the woke TV presenters on million-quid salaries who live in St John's Wood. It is the woke politicians who've never met a real person or ever had a real job. They are the establishment, and they are causing untold damage to our country. All of which is why we need a total clear out. If this country was a computer, we're going to unplug it and plug it back in. We're going to select all, Finley, and we are going to delete. I've had enough. The establishment, in my view, are slowly destroying Britain, which is why they've got to go. Only that way can we save this country and make Britain, Britain again. 0344 499 1000. Has the establishment broken Britain? Am I being unfair? Are we doing well? Is the country doing well thanks to those that govern us and the elite media and corporate class? One of my amazing listeners, wasn't it amazing yesterday, Finley and Faith, when we got that caller that you put on air, Faith, who described these people as the lanyardocracy. These are the idiots that sit on public transport, on the train, on the bus, with the lanyard, because they've got such a low self-esteem. They're like, look at me, I'm a proper person. I've got a lanyard. They have fashionable, left-wing progressive views, and these are the people that are destroying Britain. Anyway, your reaction, have I gone too far? I think I have. I might have cancelled myself. Who knows? Is Michael ready? So excited about this. Let's get the views of a peer of the realm, no less. Sir Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP and now political broadcaster. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Mark. By the way, you were referring to Rachel of Accounts. That actually was only at the very beginning of her career when she was a graduate trainee at the Bank of England. The culmination of her career was when she was working for a well-known, one of the big five banks. I think it was HSBC, but I may be wrong. And she became a regional manager, not national manager, of customer complaints. So for me, it's Rachel of customer complaints. She didn't even make it in accounts.
Well, I've got to say, if this government had a customer complaints line, you wouldn't get through, would you? Now, Michael, I want to get onto the Prime Minister in a moment because I think he's losing the plot. He's had an extraordinary row with Lindsay Hoyle, who's the leader of the House of Commons and actually a fellow member of the Labour Party. We'll come to that in a moment. But can I ask for your reaction to this conversation we're having today? Has the establishment broken Britain? I've just given a few examples of very lax border control, woke policing and net zero. What say you?
I agree. I mean, we have completely lost touch with the realities of how this country operates and really how the world economy works. And I'm afraid the Conservatives were almost as bad as the Labour Party. And I think Kemi Badenoch now is beginning to realise how bad it was. And I believe that she will be reversing that policy pretty soon. But there's no question that we have completely lost touch with reality and we're destroying the very essence of this country, which is the very reason why some of these people want to come here in the first place.
Most definitely. Like you, Michael, I'm a socially liberal person. If you're somebody that's called Bob and you feel like you're a Jennifer, good luck. May God bless you. Wear a frock. You may have the legs to pull it off. Similarly, I want to clean up the planet. I like clean air. I think we should preserve the environment. But that's not what this is about. The sort of progressive leftist groupthink of the establishment is something far more extreme.
That's right, and very damaging. Because at the end of the day, if the economy crashes, and many economists will say the economy has already crashed, we won't have the wherewithal to do all these green policies in the first place anyway. What really is a green thing is a friend of mine, we go for walks often, and he walks around with a plastic bag, not because he's sort of roaming the streets, but because what he does is he collects all the rubbish, all the tin cans, all the polystyrene stuff. And by the time he gets back home, you know, there's a massive great bag going in to people into his bin. And I think that's more important about keeping this country green than some of the things that the government is proposing, which will end up by bankruptcy.
I mean, this is what
probably won't make any difference anyway.
I wish you were Prime Minister, Michael, because you're a man of capacious intellect and common sense, and you live in the real world. That's why you were a popular Lichfield MP, because you had a relationship with your constituents. And, you know, I've got no problem with windmills or the solar panels. There's folk that have them on their houses, which heats their property in the winter. Happy days. We're just talking about common sense here, aren't we? So, for example, you know, an energy mix when it comes to net zero. When it comes to our border control, we can have sensible levels of immigration whereby if you've got something to offer the country, you're very welcome. Policing, you know, go and catch criminals and shoplifters, not people that said something unkind on Facebook. It's not complicated, is it?
No, it's not. And I've said it time and time again, and it's worth repeating. I think people who've got something to offer to this country are very welcome in this country, but they've also got to want to integrate. And I know I've said it before, but it's true. Don't come to this country if you want to make the rest of the country do what you do. When in Rome, you should do as the Romans do. And that really has to be the answer, doesn't it? Because we've always had immigration into this country. And as I've also said before, my name is Fabricant. It's a French name. I'm of Northern European, Southern Scandinavian extraction. I've got Jewish parentage. So, but if you don't want to be a part of this country, don't come.
Well, listen, I mean, amen to that, Michael. I'm so happy that you're on the show today because we've got lots of stories to get through, including, is the Prime Minister losing the plot? He's had a furious and angry row with the leader of the House of Commons, the Speaker, I should say, not the leader, the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. Also, continuing anger in Epsom over the police's reluctance to reveal details of alleged suspects in relation to the most shocking crime against a young woman. Lots to get through. More from Sir Michael Fabricant next.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk. Mark Dolan in for Ian Collins for the next 2 weeks. It's lovely to be here. Got a brilliant team, and most importantly, I've got your company. Our question today: has the establishment broken Britain? Let me know your thoughts on that. Stephen says, Mark, you know what our government establishment thinks of us when they're starting to censor or deplatform people for promoting events like May the 16th and the Unite the Kingdom March. That's Stephen in London. Well, that's an interesting development, isn't it? Because I'll tell you who's participating in that Unite the Kingdom March in mid-May. Sharon Osbourne, no less. Social media and reality TV icon, ex-spouse, of course, of the late, great Ozzy Osbourne. Is the compass shifting? I'd be interested to hear what you think about that. Big reaction to today's Dolan's dispatch. It's my view that the establishment have broken Britain with net zero, woke policies and open borders. This from Michael, who says, good on you, Mark. Say it as it is. You are 100% correct. I wish there were more people like you. Also, I've got another one here. Mark, says Ian, you're actually wrong. If the country was a computer, it would require a reinstall of Windows and start afresh. Fantastic. And finally, Rob says, always a joy to listen to Mark Dolan, especially now I've got an ear infection, as a result of which Mark sounds like Donald Duck. Rob, could I apologise? Although I will say that Donald Duck is one of my broadcasting heroes, so I'm actually very flattered. Let's get to more of your comments and a reaction to our big question in just a moment. Has the establishment broken Britain? Sir Michael Fabricant is a former Conservative MP and now political broadcaster. Michael, what's going on with the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House of Commons?
Every week, the Chief Whip, the government Chief Whip, goes to see the Speaker for a private meeting. And I believe that the Speaker has said several times that Keir Starmer has got to answer questions. He can't just evade questions. And this is what he does, of course. He gets a question and then he either attacks the Conservative Party, if it's Kemi Badenoch or a Conservative backbencher asking the questions, or if it's a Lib Dem, or if it's Reform, he goes into a wild attack against Reform, again, not answering the question. Even sometimes when Labour MPs ask a question, if he hasn't been briefed in advance, he doesn't make any attempt to answer it. He instead goes on the attack or starts talking about something completely different, or starts asking questions himself of the person who's asked the question of him. And 2 or 3 times now, the Speaker has said, look, it's Prime Minister's question time. That means the Prime Minister has to answer the question and not ask questions himself. Well, what happened this time was that the Speaker actually interrupted Keir Starmer when he was attacking Kemi Badenoch and not answering a specific question that she had asked, and started attacking the Conservative history over the last 14 years, and the Speaker cut him off. And they then went on to another item, and all seemed to have calmed down, except at the very end, when everybody files out from Prime Minister's questions, he went past the Speaker's chair, as he would have to do, swung round at the Speaker, started shouting at him, and this was witnessed by both Labour backbenchers who were shocked, Conservative backbenchers who were shocked, and also many of the journalists. They couldn't hear all that was being said. They could see that Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, got very angry with the attack, because presumably it was an attack from Keir Starmer, and started shouting back. Keir Starmer then banged the table, the actual chair on which the Speaker sits, and then before Lindsay Hoyle could reply to that, he stormed out, and apparently was very red in the face. Now, I suppose the question is, why has he got such a short fuse? Is the pressure getting too much for him? Also, one has to ask, is it that he doesn't know the answers to any of these questions? In which case, what's happened to this so-called great lawyer, someone who has the facts at his fingertips? There's now real questions about how much in control of himself he is, let alone how much in control of his own party he is.
Well, I think you're right to raise issues around his temperament and ask and probe Sir Michael as to whether the pressure is getting to him, notwithstanding that he doesn't answer questions at PMQs. He won't be the first, he won't be the last. The physical nature of this exchange with the Speaker, the bashing of the fist on the table and the heated words, it's unbecoming of a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
It certainly is, and particularly foolish when you're in full view of everybody else, not just your so-called friends in the Labour Party, but also very, very visible to the whips in the Conservative Party and indeed the whole chamber. I mean, people were quite shocked by this incredible appearance, and not only in front of the people present, it was also caught on the cameras operated by the House of Commons themselves and fed out to all the news media. It's absolutely astonishing that this could have happened and that he so lost control. And it really makes you wonder, how he would react if we were in a time of possible war. Oh, wait a moment, we could be in a time of possible war. Is this the leader we want?
Well, you have to ask that. Jacob Rees-Mogg, your former stablemate and political ally. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Sir Michael said, a Prime Minister who publicly loses his temper with the Speaker shows contempt for the electorate. Do you agree?
I think he shows contempt for the electorate. I also think he shows considerable lack of self-control and a rather worrying demonstration of what sort of mental ability he has at the moment. Because if he's actually is on walking such a thin tightrope. You do have to wonder, how is this country being governed?
I think you're right about that. He doesn't look happy. He looks exhausted. He looks like a hunted man. He's a rabbit in the headlights at the moment, Keir Starmer, isn't he? If you look at the behaviour and if you look at the body language, he's not in a good place.
He certainly isn't, because he's got enemies all around him. The backbenchers behind him want to see him gone. I know that. And certainly the parties opposite want to see him gone. And he's not good news at all for this country. And he hasn't got the, the power to stand up for what's right. So, for example, you had George Robertson, a great man, peer of the realm, former Secretary General of NATO, former Labour Defence Secretary, saying we're unprepared as a nation for war, unprepared to defend ourselves, and we're under attack. And Starmer was lost when Kemi Badenoch threw those words back at him. And so many people now feel that, the reason for this situation is because Rachel from Customer Complaints wanted to cut back on welfare, and so did Keir Starmer. But they were defeated by their own backbenchers. And that's why that was one of the first U-turns. And I think we're now up to 19 major U-turns, although some people think it's as much as 36. He has lost control. He has lost the love of the people, if he ever had it. He has lost the love and respect of his own party. And I think he's finished. And I think...
Wow.
And I said, by the way, I saw how he would behave when he was leader of the opposition, which is a much easier job, I must confess. And I said then that he was a dud. And I think he will be a goner, not just a dud, after the May elections.
Well, that's interesting. Briefly, if you can, because there are a number of people that are saying there's no figure within the Labour Party so those backbenchers and the party membership can unite around. There are many saying that because of a lack of an obvious contender, Starmer will cling on, but that's not your view.
It's not my view. They may be right. I'm not saying I've got it right all the time, far from that. But I think that Angela Rayner stands a very good chance of actually becoming Prime Minister. God help us if she does, by the way, because she's far more left-wing than Keir Starmer. And she believes in all this claptrap that you've been talking about in your monologue earlier on. But I think that the party could reunite around her. I think Wes Streeting would make a better Prime Minister, but I don't think Wes Streeting will get it because he's regarded as being too right-wing. As for Andy Burnham, well, he's not even a Member of Parliament, so he's not in the running. Oh, why isn't he a Member of Parliament? Because Starmer blocked him. Do you remember? Starmer blocked him from being made a Labour candidate in the recent by-election. And this shows you how worried Starmer is.
Most definitely. Well, the messages are coming through thick and fast. This from an unnamed texter. Michael Fabricant is truly fab, a national treasure. Michael, you've got so many fans out there. We got a massive reaction every time.
If he's not watching on television or she's not watching on television, just tell him, I'm blowing kisses.
Well, there you go. That's not something that Michael does willy-nilly. Michael, before we let you go, anger is growing in Epsom because of the most shocking assault of a young woman some time ago. And this was, obviously, it's created a lot of public anger. The police at the moment are not revealing the details of anyone alleged to have committed this shocking crime, the gang rape of a young woman. Do you think police should be required to share details of suspects when they've actually apprehended people?
Yes and no. So I don't think the names should be given out because I think that really can end up with, somebody being tried by public views and by the media rather than, by courts of justice and our jury system, which we still have, although David Lamb is trying to get rid of that. What I do think is that the nature and type of person should be announced. And I remember with the Stockport murders, how Keir Starmer himself tried to hide that it was a Somali immigrant, I think he was Somali,
Yeah.
had done this. And he was Muslim. I mean, clearly he was unwell, but he believed that his religion told him to do these terrible murders. And Starmer tried to make out that he was an Anglican choir boy at one point. Do you remember this?
I do. It's ridiculous.
I do think, to avoid speculation, people should say, yeah, the guy's white, or he's Asian, or he's African, or whatever. But you shouldn't give out the name, because if you don't give out this, then people speculate and they always think the worst. Better to know the worst than just suspect the worst, frankly. Don't you agree?
I most definitely agree. And I think, of course, Michael, you were in that particular case, we're talking about Southport and the wicked Axel Rudakabana, and it was an egregious crime. And I think the ethnicity is an important and relevant factor. Michael, what a brilliant conversation. We will catch up soon. My deep thanks to Sir Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP and now elite-level political broadcaster. Your reaction to what Sir Michael has had to say, whether it's net zero, woke policies, open borders or human rights lawyers, has the establishment broken Britain? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, this from an unnamed texter. Hello, Mark. I think the reason the establishment has deliberately run this country into the ground is payback for the Brexit vote that didn't go the way that they thought it would. I'm glad that's another point about the establishment. They hated Brexit and have they sought to prevent it, and now they've sought to thwart it, haven't they? I'll get to more of your thoughts on this in just a moment. But what about that BBC report into lawyers who are encouraging asylum seekers to pretend to be gay or to pretend that they're suffering domestic abuse in order to remain in the country? How is this possible? And my question to you this afternoon, should those people be jailed, those lawyers, if they have acted in this manner? Let's get the views of Luke Gittos, who is a lawyer and writer. Hello, Luke.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for joining us. So what's your reaction to this BBC expose?
Well, where have the BBC been? If you look at the statistics from 2023, you can see that there is a very significant increase in the number of asylum seekers applying on the basis of sexuality. This was talked about at the time as an issue. It was discussed in other outlets as an issue. I wrote about it at the time. And now the BBC have eventually caught up and recognised that this is a real phenomenon. To give you some idea, in 2021, there are around 415 applications for asylum based on claims to be of the LGBT community. That went up to 1,334 in 2022 and 1,377 in 2023. And it's also clear that it affects a particular group of asylum applicants. So immigrants from and asylum seekers from Pakistan account for about 578 of those in 2023, which is far in excess of any other minority group. So it's clear that something is happening within these numbers, and it has been happening for years, since at least 2023. To go back to your, the reality probably is that there is a mixture of legitimate claims in there, but there is obviously a practice emerging where lawyers in this jurisdiction, I actually, I balk to call them lawyers, because sometimes they're not even qualified. Sometimes they're highly unregulated individuals who are just doling out this information for cash. I mean, it really is that bad. And to answer your initial question, I mean, it goes without saying that these people should be in jail. I mean, I see these people in the same category as those running the small boats. They're in the same category of organized criminality as those people that charge extortionate numbers to get people into the country in the first place. They are effectively creating a factory for contempt of UK courts, and that's a criminal offence. You know, this represents the commission of serious crimes. So there is no doubt that that these people should be in prison. It's a serious problem, but my question is, where have the BBC been? Because this looks like it's been going on for a very significant period of time.
And what do you think motivates these lawyers and these unregulated so-called advisors? Is it money or is it ideology?
Money and ideology. It's a combination of those two things. I think that there are a great number of solicitors out there working in immigration and asylum law who genuinely care about the issue, who want to make sure that vulnerable people have a fair hearing, and that's a noble profession to ply. But there's a whole category of other individual who is driven by cynicism and by manipulating a system. And this is where I think we need to take a step back and see that these lawyers are part of a wider problem with our asylum system. We live under laws that are now 50 and 60 years old. We live under the Human Rights Act, which clearly is not fit for purpose. There is a problem with all of the laws relating to immigration and asylum that allow them to be manipulated. And the central political problem is that none of the main political parties are willing to scrap these international treaties that leave us vulnerable to this kind of abuse.
Which were drafted at a very different time in our history.
Exactly. It's a real insult to history that we haven't looked at these laws, because the Refugee Convention, which was passed in the 1960s, was designed to accommodate the flow of people moving throughout Europe in the aftermath, the long aftermath of the Second World War, people fleeing genuine persecution, often fleeing despotic and tyrannical regimes. This is now open to, I often cite the statistic that the legal definition of asylum that we have adopted would be applicable to about 14 million people across the globe at the moment. And so the idea that we could accept everyone who meets the definition is just a lie. It's a legal lie that we need to reckon with. We need a system of law that is suited to the specific problems that we face today, the specific questions that the small boats crisis raises. And we are instead relying on law that was drafted in the aftermath of the Second World War that were designed to deal with very, very different conditions. And I think it's a historic betrayal of our national obligation to the vulnerable, to people who are fleeing genuine persecution. Right. To not reckon with this problem, because the longer it goes on, the longer we sit here and close our eyes to this, the more we will have abusive lawyers, the more we will have abuses of the system, and the more that genuine asylum claimants will be ignored or brushed over. And that is a genuine tragedy.
That's right. Those crossing from a safe country on a dinghy, that will be, in the Channel, having left France, the unscrupulous lawyers and so-called advisors who are unregulated, their actions are bad news for deserving refugees.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think anyone who cares about asylum seekers, genuine asylum seekers, should be absolutely outraged at the activities of these individuals, because firstly, it clogs up our legal system. It creates claims that are without merit, meaning that judges and courts can't deal with the proper cases. But two, I think it creates a really awful situation for those seeking to come in and settle here on a proper basis. Because understandably, people who have to accommodate and live alongside unvetted, unwarranted claimants for asylum, people who have come into the country illegally, who have obtained their place here unlawfully, those people justifiably don't want to live next to those people. We need to make sure that we can actually accommodate the asylum seekers that we bring in. And this is a point that we don't usually discuss. We don't talk about, well, what are we going to do with asylum seekers once they come into the country? It's absolutely clear that the current situation, putting them in hotels, embedded in communities that have had absolutely no consultation about the presence of asylum seekers in their communities. I'm thinking most recently of the Bell Hotel in Epping, where we saw genuine social unrest around the presence of asylum seekers in a particular community. This is an urgent, pressing question that needs to be reckoned with. What do we do with people other than put them into hotels and hope for the best? We need to be thinking about the practical questions that these asylum claims raise, rather than allowing this leaky, awful, abused system to carry on. And I think until politicians really grasp the nettle, it's going to be a really grim position for genuine asylum seekers coming to this country.
And extraordinary, therefore, Luke, in terms of the reputation of your profession, that just the expression human rights lawyer is now enough to send a shiver down your spine. It shouldn't be that way. That should be a very noble professional title. But now these folk are up there with estate agents for public enmity.
Yeah, agreed. Something really terrible has happened to the role of the human rights lawyer, because too many people professing to be human rights lawyers have actually become activists. And lawyers should be separating their legal practice from their politics. People do become involved in particular areas because they are politically interested in them. I started in criminal defense because I was interested in pushing back against the powers of the state. I was interested in defendants' rights. It makes sense that someone who is interested in immigration and asylum would enter that area of law. But what you can never do is allow your personal politics to drive your practice. What you certainly can never do is allow your personal politics to run roughshod over your obligation to the courts. All lawyers have their overriding obligations to our courts, to the rule of law, to maintaining the rule of law. And that's why I'm afraid these lawyers that put their own personal politics over and above that duty don't deserve the title human rights lawyer. They deserve another name.
They most definitely do. Unbroadcastable. Luke, before we let you go, do you think, briefly if you can, do you think that leftist progressive groupthink is a problem in the wider legal establishment?
Yes. I think that, as with many professions, it becomes acceptable to express certain political opinions and unacceptable or impolite to express others. And the legal profession used to be broadly conservative. I mean, openly so. I mean, that is the point of a legal system, is to conserve. Most of our practice is based on conserving the thinking of the past. You know, when you have a legal judgment, you are obliged to follow it unless there is some very significant reason why that should be departed from. So that created, I think, in the past, a culture amongst lawyers that was conservative, concerned with maintaining the status quo unless countervailing pressures prevailed. What you have now is actually, it's far more acceptable and open to be openly left-wing. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I do think that that has led to certain attitudes being more prevalent and more acceptable amongst legal professionals. I mean, just look at legal LinkedIn. If you have the time, you can see that there does skew towards a particular political angle. So,
couple of pronouns in there?
Pronouns, let me think. Pronouns,
Ukrainian flag.
ideology.
Not that I'm against Ukraine, but, you know, the usual box ticking, be kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Black Lives Matter.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you are listing off the political priorities of the legal profession, in my view.
Woke bingo.
Woke bingo. But also, I think in private, a lot of lawyers are quite worried about the political perception of the profession. Lawyers are very nervous about saying anything politically publicly. I mean, I shredded my reputation in that regard many years ago because I wrote politically as well as practicing law. But most lawyers don't do that. Most lawyers are private in their political opinions. But privately, they do worry. They worry that the profession is veering towards a particular direction. They worry that human rights in particular has created a real political problem for the judiciary and for lawyers, because it's created an impression amongst the public, which isn't always accurate, that the vast majority of human rights lawyers are politically motivated. I wouldn't necessarily think that was true.
No.
But the profession has become politicized, become a part of the political conversation, and I think a lot of lawyers worry about that in private, if not publicly.
Yes, there's a real worry that lawyers will lose their intellectual and moral authority upon which they rely in order to do the work that they do. Luke, how can people find out more about what you do?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so Google me, but I also write for an online magazine called Spiked. And we also head up an organisation that offers free legal assistance to those who need it, called the Freedom Law Clinic. So if you need legal help without being charged extortionate fees, then have a look at the Freedom Law Clinic.
The Freedom Law Clinic. My thanks to Luke Gittos. Thank you, Luke. We'll catch up sooner. Very fascinating conversation. Your reaction, 03444991000. Has the establishment broken Britain? Anger continues in Epsom following the most appalling attack on a young woman. We've got more on that next.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've received a message into the show that says that these lawyers should be jailed and struck off, those encouraging asylum seekers to pretend to be gay or pretend to come from a domestic abuse setting. Even if these asylum seekers are fleeing persecution because of their sexuality, it's not our responsibility or duty to be the safety net and safe haven for the entire third world. Well, I think what you'll find is a lot of these people who are claiming to be gay culturally detest gay people and would be quite happy to see them chucked from the highest building. So the whole thing is a complete farce. Another text says those human rights lawyers involved now enable assault, rape, theft, etc. by helping people who should not be here to actually stay. And another one, we need human responsibilities lawyers. What a great idea. Now, anger continues to grow in Epsom following the most appalling attack on a young woman. This was, I'm afraid to say, a gang rape. And locals want to know who these people are and what their background is, including their ethnicity. What do we have by way of information on this story? I'm delighted to welcome David Shipley, social commentator and investigative journalist. Hello, David.
Hi.
David, thank you for joining us. It's my understanding that the police have said, well, we don't know who the suspects are, so we can't give information. Is that true?
Yeah, they've issued a very strange statement saying, this horrific gang rape took place between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., so for 2 hours outside the Methodist Church in Epsom on Saturday night. But they're saying they don't have enough information, have sufficient information to release descriptions of the suspects, which is a very peculiar line to be taking.
Well, do they have a case if they simply have no CCTV footage? If they haven't apprehended anyone, then are they not telling the truth?
I'm not going to accuse them of lying. I think it is strange that they don't have any description. They obviously have interviewed the victim.
Right.
One would presume she must be able to give some description of her attackers.
It's true.
And it just seems odd that they can't say anything. And this is on Thursday, so they've been investigating this crime for almost a whole week. It is confusing. And I think I can understand why locals are getting increasingly angry.
Well, David, I'm glad you've struck a note of scepticism on that one. And that's a feeling shared by angry locals. There's been a great breakdown of trust, perhaps since Southport, in regard to police messaging and the public, hasn't there?
There has been. And I think also what's very notable is the different responses the different groups get. So a couple of weeks ago, we saw widespread disorder in Clapham, supermarkets being looted, and the policing response was very, very soft touch. There were a couple of uniformed officers there. Last night in Epsom, we had a peaceful gathering of people protesting, and the riot police came out. And there's this two-tier justice element to it all, I think, which is very upsetting for people.
Yes, and if you bring in riot police, things will escalate. It's a foregone conclusion, isn't it?
Mm. Well, yes, and we saw that in Epping last summer, of course, where certainly in the first few gatherings, Essex police handled them very badly, brought counter-protesters into contact with protesters and escalated situations. And it just seems here that Surrey police are following a similar playbook.
And the problem you've got, if the police are not straight with the public and reveal information as and when they get it, then there will be fake news, there will be conspiracy theories.
Of course there will. The best way to stop this stuff happening is for the police to provide as much detail as possible, as quickly as possible. And that's actually what the new guidelines that are in process recommend they do. And it doesn't really feel here as though Essex are following those guidelines.
No, definitely. By the way, so what do you think? How much information should the police be obliged to provide, and at what stage, David, would you say?
I mean, I think they should seek to provide as much information as possible. In the case here where there are a group of men who have conducted a gang rape who are at large, in the interest of tracking these men down to stop them doing it again and to get them into custody as quickly as possible, I think the duty should be to disclose as much as possible. That's to protect the public.
And is there an agenda underneath this? Is there the protection of a narrative perhaps at play here, that if they say that we are speaking to potential suspects who are of an ethnic background, that somehow that doesn't fit the rather sort of woke worldview? Is there a possibility of that?
It may be. I mean, I think the issue we have, of course, is that different national ethnic groups do offend at different rates, and reality is the problem here. And if you can't just keep refusing to disclose things because they're uncomfortable realities.
Is this institutional and cultural within the police, do you think, this rather sort of timid approach to public messaging?
I think it is, and I think there's an institutional anti-racism which has actually become quite dangerous. We saw this in the Southport inquiry report, which came out this week, actually, where again and again and again there's a real timidity around Axel Rudakabana, and unwillingness to say this is a sinister, dangerous young man and we need to get him into custody because of his ethnicity in some situations, in other cases because he's autistic, and it's as though we've forgotten that the primary duty of the police should be protecting the public from criminals, not the other way around.
Can you give us your social medias, please, David?
Oh, sure. I'm at Shipley Wrights on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now.
A must read. Brilliant to meet you for the first time. David, we'll catch up soon. Thank you for your valuable time, David Shipley, social commentator and investigative journalist, who says the police must tell us more when these cases have happened. Laura is in Wiltshire. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Mark. I'm calling because I've been listening all morning about these dodgy lawyers.
Yeah.
And it was just something I wanted to point out, and I said to your research, I'm slightly nervous about doing it, but I read the Telegraph cover to cover most days early, and they have a court and social circular page which tells you what the King's doing, but they also put a list regularly of people called to the bar. And over the past couple of years, I've been absolutely staggered at the demographic and the names who are in that list. If they were being called to the bar in Asia, you might not be. So there are lots of Chinese names, lots of names that I would say are Muslim. I don't know, but I mean,
there's not too many Dave Smiths or Claire Greens.
You get the odd Rupert or Emily, you know, someone rather, about every 15 names. But it's staggering, and all I'm thinking is how clever, you know, various minorities have been standing on Gaza tickets as councillors or as MPs. And if we're also flooding our judiciary with people who are politically motivated in a particular way, we can't be surprised with the outcomes. And I said to your researchers, just Google it, have a look, you'll be staggered. And most people don't read that page, I would think. And I'm amazed, but therefore very unsurprised by some of the decisions that are being made and in future are going to be made, and who's willing to represent some of these people.
Well, I think that a lot of the public have lost faith with establishment media, Laura, and indeed the political establishment, hence the rise of Reform, Restore and others. There's a real danger that the public will no longer trust the legal establishment either, and that's a big problem.
But they've got good reason for that. Look at some of the ridiculous decisions that have been made recently.
Yeah.
You know, child rapists, you name it, getting let off, and people doing far less terrible things.
Stay in the country.
Jail.
Stay in the country because your kid only likes a certain kind of chicken McNuggets.
Yeah, but there are worse cases than that.
Yeah.
You know, people being let off on appalling charges. And you think, who are these judges? They don't always say who they are. So how do we know?
Well, I totally agree. Laura, thank you for a great call. And I don't disagree at all. I think it's a huge, huge problem. And Laura there pointing out that when she looks at the appointments of people coming to the bar, that actually they don't seem to represent the demographic majority of the country. Breaking news. The government is investigating BBC reports which revealed some migrants are being advised to make false claims that they're gay or victims of domestic abuse in order to stay in the country. Number 10 said there were robust safeguards to make sure claims are rigorously and fairly assessed. Where are those safeguards? I'm not too familiar with them. The Prime Minister's spokesman said the Home Office and the regulator, the Immigration Service Authority, work to ensure anyone potentially abusing our immigration system is held accountable. Well, I don't think they are. The whole thing's a hot mess. Folks, a simple question this afternoon. Have the establishment broken Britain? Big hour to come.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
2:02. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Ian Collins. A massive 2 hours coming up. Breaking this afternoon, anger grows in Epsom as the police refuse to reveal details of the alleged suspects linked to a shocking attack on a local woman. Should the authorities be forced to reveal the ethnicity and background of alleged suspects? Is Keir Starmer losing the plot as he has an angry row with the Speaker of the House of Commons? Is he feeling the pressure? And Donald Trump's extraordinary row with the Pope continues. We'll hear from a leading cleric who backs the president. I'll also be asking this cleric what he thinks of Donald Trump re-imaging himself as Jesus Christ. That's going to be a conversation. Oh dear, more bad news for Rachel from accounts. The Chancellor's repeated raids on households and businesses will push the UK's tax burden to a peacetime high of 42.1% of GDP. Well, just to put that in plain English, she's going to cost households another £4,500 as a result of her policy. She's raising taxes at the fastest pace in the world. Don't take my word for it. That is the opinion of the International Monetary Fund. So much for stabilising the economy. And our question this afternoon is a simple one. Whether it's net zero, woke policing, open borders, wokery in our public institutions, have the establishment broken Britain? 0344 499 1000. The brilliant Faith is taking your calls. Jana is directing our TV output. So if you want to see the show, head over to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. I'll tell you, it's a very exciting programme to watch. Sam's pressing the buttons. Finley is the boss. We've got so much to get through, but I can't do it without your opinions. Have the establishment broken Britain? Let's talk. Now, the fallout from a BBC investigation into crooked and corrupt human rights lawyers and unregulated advisors coaching asylum seekers into gaming the system to stay here continues. And we've got some breaking news. The government is now investigating that BBC report. Number 10 have said there were robust safeguards to make sure claims are rigorously and fairly assessed. But if you look at that BBC report, it would seem it's quite the opposite is the case. Let's get the views of broadcaster, author and former Conservative government minister Edwina Currie. Hello, Edwina.
Hi. Well, I mean, the very obvious thing, Mark, is there aren't any robust safeguards. In fact, there probably aren't too many in the way of safeguards at all. And also what struck me was, my goodness, it's the BBC. They've suddenly gone non-woke. Oh, my word. Is that what my licence fee is now being spent on? Actually looking at what's going wrong? Miracles will always happen, you know.
That's right. They've indulged in that rare thing, Edwina, journalism.
Well, and not just journalism, but proper investigation, properly looking at something that really needed dealing with in an effective way, having a proper undercover reporter speaking Urdu and trapping people into demonstrating how they are conspiring to defraud the taxpayer, to really to game the system. I mean, you know, hats off to these lawyers coming up with the idea that, you know, almost anybody could be gay, or a chap could be abused in his relationships and therefore he can't possibly go home. I have to say hats off to them. But it's a conspiracy, and it's a conspiracy to defraud, and it's a crime.
It most definitely is. Are you surprised by Number 10's reaction? I'll just, for those joining us now, reiterate what Number 10 has said in response to the BBC investigation. There are robust safeguards to make sure claims are rigorously and fairly assessed. The Prime Minister's spokesperson said the Home Office and the regulator and the Immigration Advice Authority were working very effectively to ensure anyone potentially abusing our immigration system is held accountable. That's not happening, Edwina. One fears that this sort of corruption and criminality is rife.
Well, that statement is a statement of what's not true. That's absolutely obvious. Whoever has made the statement in number 10 is making the statement that you would expect from them. But the statement they should have made is, we're going to check this lot out. And indeed, somebody in the Home Office should be saying something along the lines of, this is what I would say if I was the Home Secretary. Right, we're going to go through all the claims from people whose legitimate visas are about to expire and who have claimed to have been abused or to be activists in their home country, which they didn't claim when they first applied for the visa, or to have been gay. In other words, the claim is different when they want to claim asylum than the claim that they made when they applied for the visa in the first place. There's plenty of those. I mean, the trouble is, there's probably about, 400,000 a year like that. So, yes, what you're going to have to do is get some of the people who are doing DEI stuff or God knows what, all the woke stuff, shift them into doing this I would give them points for the number of cases they uncover satisfactorily and some little bonuses. How about that? Do you think that might work?
Not a bad idea. Edwina, you mentioned DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. We can both agree that we want to clean up the planet. We can both agree that solar panels and wind farms have their place in an energy mix. We can agree that a sensible, manageable level of immigration made up of people who seek to contribute something to this country and will integrate are all welcome things. We can agree that illegal immigration is completely unacceptable and should unilaterally be ended. But that's not the position of the establishment, is it? Whether it's the political elite, the media class, the so-called lanyardocracy, who believe in ideological levels of net zero and effective open borders. Our question this afternoon, I'd love to put it to you, is a simple one. Have the establishment broken Britain?
Well, the establishment is a kind of vague idea. It goes back to, I think there was a book originally written in the 1960s when I was a student called The Establishment. And it struck me that it was written by a very establishment personality, which neither you nor I are. So we can look at it in a more objective fashion. I'm an optimist. I think our country is a great one, and I think our country has a strong and stable and democratic future. But where we're at the moment is a mess. And we're in a mess because we spend a fortune and get very little back. That's also why people who come from other countries who are prepared to work really, really hard can make headway. I'm thinking of a care home not far from where I live up here in the Peak District, where they've been relying very heavily on people born in other countries and here legitimately, because they're prepared to work a 70-hour week and the locals are not. So if you lose one person who's born in the Philippines, you're going to have to find at least 2 and possibly 3 locals to replace them.
And that's an example of high quality immigration, isn't it? But then you're right to question the term establishment. Some would argue that even Nigel Farage is in fact an establishment figure.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe he owns lots of properties. He's been a very successful businessman, and he was an oil futures trader. I don't know how more establishment you can get than that.
But what's interesting about Farage and others, he seeks to shake up the establishment, and isn't that exactly what your former boss, Margaret Thatcher, did?
Well, yes, she did. And basically what Margaret was doing was ticking a box that doesn't exist anymore. The box called merit, the box that's called excellence, the box that says, you know what, we appoint people on merit.
Careful, Edwina, you'll get yourself cancelled with that talk.
Oh yeah, it's evil, isn't it?
Please
it's
don't mention
to say things.
Please don't mention hard work or turning up on time.
Or actually doing the job that you're supposed to be doing, which is what those people in number 10 issuing silly statements that are clearly not true are failing to do. What we really need is ministers on the front bench, and part of me doesn't care what party they are, who will stop making empty speeches, who will stop issuing slogans, who will actually concentrate. we'll stop going on holiday in the middle of crises. How about that for a start? And we'll actually make things happen, and we'll be honest and truthful with the population. When I was a backbench MP, I used to have to say to my constituents in old coal mining constituency, you won't always like what I have to tell you, but I won't lie to you. I will always tell you the truth. And you won't like it always. I may have to say to you, yeah, that pit's got to close, or this is going to happen, or that's not going to happen, or we can't have this. But at least you will know that when I say something's going to happen, it's happening. And that was very much Margaret Thatcher's approach. Don't announce anything till it's done. Don't announce anything 2 years in advance. You know, it makes sense to you and me. And it doesn't seem to make sense to anybody in government. They still think they're fighting elections instead of running the country. It needs a whole different set of skills, doesn't it?
Most definitely. And going back to Thatcher as a figure from the establishment that shook things up, she upended the class system with right to buy and with the ability very easily to start a small business. And she upended the economy with monetarism and much besides. So this is the sort of revolution that Britain needs going forward if it's going to prevail. It needs the mother of all shake-ups, Edwina.
I think that's absolutely right. And whoever can get in next time with a majority and who can say, look, we've got to really start changing things, I think that would be wonderful. I mean, you can see it's happening in Hungary. You can see it's happened in Germany. You can see it's happened in Italy. It's happened, but in the wrong way, in my view, in America.
Poland is about to outpace us for economic growth.
That's no surprise. A lot of Poles came here 20, 25 years ago, saw how we did things in a non-Soviet way, and then went home and have made a real success of life. That's absolutely brilliant. We've got to concentrate on getting things right ourselves. And until we start being honest with each other and with the world outside and with our voters, that's not going to happen. You call Margaret a member of the establishment. That's one thing, Mark, that she wasn't. She was an outsider. She came from Lincolnshire.
There you go.
She had a Lincolnshire accent and she was a woman. I tell you what,
good point.
That's the way to make things change, isn't it?
Good point. Daughter of a shopkeeper and grammar school educated. You're absolutely right about that. And my goodness, we could do with her economic policies, because by way of research for today's show, I've been looking at economic growth in the 80s. By 87, the GDP rate was 5% annually. Well, you'd bite your hand off for that. We've got the latest news today, Edwina, that the Chancellor is raising taxes at the fastest pace in the world, according to the IMF, at a cost to every household of £4,500. Now, love her or hate her, Rachel Reeves' policies are not working.
Well, that's right. And of course, with the increase in the oil prices, with petrol and diesel going up, she's raking in more money as a result of that as well, because there's VAT on the top of every litre that you put in your car. And there is the fuel duty on top of that as well, which is a percentage. So, you know, she's not even going to cut those prices. I don't think she's got the bandwidth to understand any of this. I wonder if Wes Streeting has, because, for example, he's been hinting that perhaps we should ban the strikes in the NHS, the strikes of the junior doctors. It seems to me that is really quite radical for a Labour minister to be saying, but I think that's probably a very good idea. And I think Kemi Badenoch should say to him sweetly, with a wicked, slightly malicious smile on her face, and we will back you and we will vote for it in the House of Commons, because you can't do it without us.
Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has had a furious row with the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Is he feeling the heat, Edwina?
Oh, yes, it's about time. If I wasn't on national TV, I would say it's about bloody time. But there you go.
Thank God no one's listening.
Starmer has been told repeatedly in Prime Minister's questions by the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, of course, was a long-standing Labour MP. He was in the House long before Starmer came, that he's got to actually answer the questions, and he can't keep going on about the Tory's previous record instead of answering the questions. And he gets a ticking off. He's had one several weeks on the row. And we couldn't exactly hear what the row was at the Speaker's chair. But it looks like Starmer was trying to tick off the Speaker, which is a no, 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 no. The Speaker is actually the second citizen in the country after the monarch. Did you know that?
I did not know that. And he's politically neutral and representing the rules and traditions of the House of Commons.
That's absolutely right. So going back to a settlement of, 400 odd years ago, the Speaker is the second citizen.
Wow.
He's more important than the Lord Chancellor, who is the Speaker of the House of Lords. And we should be very proud of that. I know Lindsay, I like him very much. I've seen all sorts of memes and texts floating around saying that he's a bad guy and he spends an awful lot of time going abroad. That's part of his job. He's got to represent us in other countries and other parliaments.
He's very fair and even-handed, I've observed.
He's a nice guy, but he's very northern. He's genuinely northern, and he doesn't put up with any nonsense. Is that clear?
No, most definitely. And he's a genius compared to, of course, the previous Speaker of the House of Commons, the man who thought Brexit was bollocks, whose name now has miraculously escaped my brain.
Yes, John Bercow. And there was one before that, Michael Martin, who was a Glaswegian Member of Parliament, and he was encouraging them all to dip their fingers into the pot for the expenses. Do you remember that?
I remember it well. You're so right. Bring back Bernard Weatherall. He's, of course, the legend from your era, and Betty Boothroyd. They don't make them like that anymore. Thank you for jogging my memory. Edwina, before we let you go, anger is growing in Epsom because the public would like to know more about any alleged suspects who are linked to the most egregious crime, the gang rape of a young woman in that area. Do you think the police need to be more open with the public about who their suspects are and what their background is?
Well, I suspect that Surrey police are acting on the basis that they're about to arrest somebody or more than one person, and that that means that they don't want to say anything about it before. One of the most important British principles going back over 1,000 years is you're innocent to proven guilty, and crime has to be proven. You actually have to show that a crime has been committed. So the people who are bouncing around on our streets in Epsom of all places, terribly posh place, with their megaphones are there to cause trouble, and they would cause trouble whatever had happened. And I know which side I'm on. I think I'm on the side of Surrey police.
Edwina, always a privilege to have you on the programme. Look forward to catching up soon. My thanks to best-selling author, broadcaster and former Conservative government minister, Edwina Currie, somebody that was in the House of Commons in 1987 when economic growth was at 5%. Folks, we were swimming in cash. Can we rebuild this country? Can we save Britain? A simple question today. Has the establishment broken it? This is Talk.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Should the police reveal more about suspected suspects in relation to crimes like the mass rape of this poor woman in Epsom? Joan is in Sunderland in the northeast. Hello, Joan.
Hello. I've been watching the footage on the TV, that little bit where the police are there in riot gear.
Yeah.
We've got 2T policing in this country and it makes me see red. These people turn up in riot gear when ordinary local people have concerns, and yet Rent-A-Mob can come, they can scream, they can burn the Israeli flag. No riot gear and nothing much done. The police just stand around really and watch. That gets me really mad.
Well, that's right. Those central London so-called peace marches after October the 7th, Joan, featured people walking down the street with placards saying "From the river to the sea," which effectively means destroy Israel. Yeah. And the other one is "Globalise the Intifada," which means bombs in concert arenas and on public transport. And I've watched the footage of cops do nothing.
That's right, but think about Avon and Somerset Police, 3 days short of 6 months to investigate that piece of trash, Pascal Robinson Foster or whatever his name is, who was on Glastonbury.
Oh, yes.
Chanting death to the IDF.
Yes, Bob Vylan.
Yes, and he was at it again not so long since, doing exactly the same thing. The Metropolitan Police, I may be wrong, I have not heard one word because they were going to investigate it. Now, I saw with my own eyes, I heard with my own ears. He does it every time, nothing for him, absolutely nothing. And then we've got other things that are happening. We've got Bridget Phillipson. We had that ruling about what is a woman. She should be sacked because we still don't know about safe places for women. West Streeting, the NHS is riddled with rubbish that needs to be sorted out. It's absolutely a disgrace. And human rights lawyers, they should be jailed, but the gravy boat should stop. And not so long since there was a case where a foreign double murderer had taken a prison warder hostage.
Yes.
And he was, the lawyer defended him because he was put into solitary and he became depressed. Allegedly, that case cost £240,000. The prisoner won 7.5. The lawyer, if you deduct 7.5 from 240, £232,500 went to that lawyer for defending that case. He'd already had a judgment. They shouldn't be allowed to have any more. He shouldn't have been even in that position. He took the prison officer hostage. We've got to stop all of this rubbish. It's ridiculous.
You're right, you should have no case to plea when that has happened, Joan.
No. And as for chicken nuggets, were chicken nuggets invented when the CCHR became false?
I don't think so. It was only...
I don't think so either. So it's just absolute rubbish. But Starmer made sure that these human rights lawyers had plenty money in the pot because it was topped up. That gravy train needs to stop. We cannot afford it. Plus, it's unfair and it's just causing hate among people who want fairness and want justice to be fair, and we're fed with this absolute rubbish.
Joan, you always talk brilliant sense. Thank you for gracing the show with your presence today, and look forward to speaking soon. Derek's in Manchester. Derek, what would you do with these lefty lawyers?
What would I do? I'd jail them and deport them with the ones that they were trying to keep here. They should be jailed. Idea. I mean, the top of it, it's fraud. It's out and out fraud. And these are supposed to be upholding the law, these people.
But it's a perversion of the course of justice. It's criminality. It's fraud. It's all of the above.
Of course it is, but, you know, I mean, the only thing that surprised me is that anyone is amazed by the fact that this was happening because, you know, I mean, we've been hearing it for years, haven't we? Guy can't get sent back because he's openly gay and all that. Well, hang on. You know, if you're living in somewhere like Pakistan and you know it's totally against the law, just as it was here a few years back, you know, if you're living somewhere like that, what do? You keep your mouth shut, don't you? You keep quiet about it. It's no reason to go and invade someone else's country, that's for sure.
Well, you're right about that. The problem you've got, Derek, is this brings the wider legal establishment into disrepute, doesn't it? Just like academia.
Absolutely. Well, academia's been like that for years anyway. I mean, they've been corrupting children since I was a kid. I was lucky. I didn't listen to them properly.
Well, I know. I mean, they talk about the most educated are actually Labour voters now, and many supporters of Labour think that's an example of how brilliant they are. I'd say the opposite's the case. If you're hyper-educated,
yeah, or indoctrinated,
and that is the difference.
And you know something. They keep going on about we've got a problem with asylum seekers and all this. You know, I'm really not. I've just been past Liverpool docks. There's two landing craft type things in there, Royal Navy. They're rotting away. I mean, they were supposed to have been scrapped a few years ago, from what I can gather. They're virtually rotting away. I mean, they're still floating, obviously, because they're sat in the dock there. But you know, why can't they put these out in the channel? Load them up with every single boat, dinghy crosser, and when they've got a full one, to sail it over to France, drop the front and land them on the beach there. Because, you know, what right has France got to wave them on over here? They're their problem. They let them in their country. They let them into France. So they're their problem, not ours.
You're right, Derek, and the authorities watch them get onto those boats and leave France. It is a scandal. Let's not forget we've paid them £500 million to stop the boats, and we're about to do the same again. Talk about throwing good money after bad. Derek, have an excellent Thursday afternoon. We will speak soon. Has the establishment broken Britain? Meanwhile, the outrageous and explosive row between the Pope and Donald Trump continues apace. We're going to get the views of a leading cleric next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk. Lovely to have your company. Has the establishment broken Britain? I'll be taking your calls shortly on that one, 0344 499 1000. But the explosive war of words between the White House and the Pope continues apace. Let's get reaction from a leading cleric himself, Bishop Kai H. Dewar, FSHC. Bishop, lovely to have you on the programme.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be with you. You're looking very well today.
Well, I try. I've got to dress up for the bishop, haven't I? And it's massively exploding, this story. Donald Trump and his war of words with the Pope. Where do you stand on this?
I think both men need to wind themselves back a little. The problem is that we're having a conflict that is based on one part from institutional authority and on the other part moral authority, and finding the middle ground between the two is advantageous to both sides of the argument, but it's also it's not a win-win situation for either person. Trump does not speak as pastor-in-chief of the United States, and neither does Pope Leo speak as president of the Vatican City State. They're fulfilling their roles respectively, but this loggerhead between the administration and the papacy is not going to serve American Catholics or the Christian church around the world any good if it carries on with the rhetoric that it's going down, in my opinion.
Well, I think you're right about that, although it's distressing to see such a left-wing, radical, woke, progressive Pope in post, isn't it?
I had high hopes when Pope Leo was announced as the new Pope, and sadly those hopes have been dashed, particularly in the last 48 hours with what we've seen with him signing the Golden Book there at the Grand Mosque, aligning the Vatican and aligning the Catholic Church very dangerously with the Islamic faith, something that began under Pope Francis. So yes, it is very, very disheartening. But this line that's being drawn in the sand of, is it liberalism as a pope? Is it conservatism as a president? It's a line that is never going to offer a clear, distinctive outcome, because both men fulfill a very different role within the political system that exists in geopolitics. And the Pope needs to stick to speaking on matters of moral authority, and the president needs to stick to speaking matters on political authority, and not cross that line, except where, that line becomes dangerously blurred or dangerously crossed, which to me, and my views on Islam are very public. There's certainly not where the Church of England and the Catholic Church stands on it, but that side of things, it can be looked at as, this signing of the Golden Book and aligning with the Islamic faith is a move that threatens the nation states, because Islam is a religion that tries to replace every nation state it enters.
Is this a Christian surrender?
I think in a form it's a capitulation. I've long disagreed with both the Church of England and the Catholic Church's viewpoint that we serve the same God when we look at the Christian Judeo God and the Islamic God. The writings of the Quran clearly demonstrate that we're not talking about the same God. And to anybody that understands the Quran and understands the Bible, it's very clear to read that the Mahdi of the Islamic faith is what the Christians and the Jews recognize as the Antichrist. So I think in a roundabout way, it is a form of capitulation. And on this one, I have to say, I truly agree with the incredible man of God, the Pope we never had, in my opinion, Cardinal Robert Sarah, who's long stated his views on Islam, which are very much the same as mine, and has openly said, the enemy is not at the gates, or as he called them, the barbarians. The barbarian is not at the gates. They're living in the city. And this is just a further strengthening of that position.
And this is ideologically and philosophically and spiritually illiterate, isn't it, given the fact that Islam is none too liberal about other faiths?
It's completely, to me, a dangerous ideological shift. And one of
based on a lie.
It is. And one of the things that really kind of worked on my nerve, I think is the nicest way of putting it, is watching the Pope standing there in the mosque, bowing at the name of Allah, when the foundational principle of Christianity and Judaism is the first commandment, something that Christ says these two are the greatest of all commandments. The first one being, for you shall have no other gods but the Lord thy God, and him only will you worship. So to see a Pope, and as we've seen in the Church of England and the Church of Wales, to see bishops and archbishops capitulating to the Islamic religion, allowing the proclamation of the Adhan from high altars and all of this kind of stuff, is to me an abandoning of the very foundation of Christian teaching that Christ reinforced to not only to the disciples but throughout history because of the scripture. And it is in many aspects a form of Christian surrender, all in the ideological standpoint of diversity, of equality, of inclusionism. And it's including a religion that at its core would wipe out the religion that's including it at the first opportunity, should they ever get a controlling share of the state or the foothold in the church to take control. We've seen all across the United Kingdom the number of churches that have been closed down or abandoned, that are being converted into mosques and Islamic centers at an alarming rate, and never deemed to be given back, and empowering what many are looking at as the Islamification of not just the United Kingdom, but Europe as well. So this, to me, was a liberal ideological move that was a step too far.
It just seems odd, doesn't it? I feel it's feeding the monster, because I've got no huge issue with Islam, and we've got colleagues, friends, neighbours who are peaceful, moderate British Muslims, no problem. But the theology itself is very absolutist, and it's about conquer, isn't it?
Well, we must look at it from what it truly is. Islam is not just a religion. It is a theocratical political ideology with a religious bent, for want of a better expression. And that theocratic ideology is the subjugation of every society it enters to Sharia law. Now, the difficulty we've got is, I know some incredible men and women that are what we call moderate Muslims, and they are truly incredible people. I love them dearly. But their silence on fundamentalist Islam, which is rapidly rising across the world, some estimated 25% of all Muslims are now fundamentalists, which is roughly about 500 million people worldwide. That silence in itself is, to me, a form of complicity.
And isn't it ironic that we may have more Islamic extremism in the UK than they have in Saudi Arabia? That's how bad it's got.
Well, you've got the Emirates, Saudi, banning their students from coming to the United Kingdom because of, the radicalization of universities with things like the Muslim Brotherhood. And if you look at the statistics alone of this, this claimed, and I know it's a disputed figure, but if you look at it and say, well, 25% of Islamic believers are fundamentalists, that's 700,000 men in the United Kingdom that believe in that way of life. That's 3.5 times larger than the British Army.
And we've seen them every weekend in our major cities post October the 7th. An interesting post on X from Ayan Hirsi Ali, Bishop, who is a broadcaster and commentator, and she has said the following: as I write this post, Pope Leo is in Algeria, bowing at the Great Mosque of Algiers, shoes removed, pen in hand at the Golden Book. I do not begrudge Muslims their mosques, she writes. I object to the theology being performed in such gestures. The implicit suggestion, increasingly explicit in Vatican discourse, that the differences between Islam and Christianity are merely cultural, and that interfaith harmony can be achieved by erasing doctrinal distinction. She's right to point this out, isn't she?
100%. The problem is that you're not going to erase doctrinal distinction from a faith that does not recognize the doctrines and the faith of the ones seeking this greater coalition, so to speak, this this ecumenical relationship. And that's a problem that Islam and many faiths, large and small, have in incorporating themselves into other societies. The simple fact of the matter is Islam does not recognize Christianity and its right to exist. It does not recognize Judaism, Sikhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and every other ism under the sun. It recognizes one thing and one thing only, that at the core tenet of Islam is Islam, that the whole world should be governed by Islam and should be one great Sharia state. And that's not going to be resolved by bowing in front of a mosque or signing a book. I don't care what His Holiness thinks he's achieving by it. Islam has proven through history that it's not compatible with Islam, never mind any other religion in the Western world or in the Eastern world.
And do you think the King has made a similar mistake to the Pope in recent years?
I do, which is why I wrote my open letter and my follow-up letter to the British people. The problem is this: there are parts of the Islamic world that I am fascinated by. I'm particularly fascinated by Islamic architecture. I think it's an incredible achievement. Their craft skills are brilliant. Their numeracy was phenomenal for the age, but you cannot divorce the mystical aspects or the fantastical aspects from the fundamental aspects, I mean by that, aspects which are inherent and the basis upon which the faith is built. And I think that distinction has not been made by His Majesty or other leading officials like the Pope that are embracing one side purely on the basis that they feel, well, it's possible to divorce the two, and it clearly is not.
Now, the Pope is definitely, I think, caught up in the progressive left-wing groupthink of the establishment. I think it's very sad and very ironic coming from the Roman Catholic Church, which is supposed to be highly conservative, at least socially, and you've got the Pope, all in with net zero, which is economic suicide for ordinary working people. That will create misery and rising energy prices. Doesn't sound very Christian to me. He's all in with issues like open borders, and we've got a front page headline in the Telegraph: Pope, world is being ravaged by tyrants. Clearly a coded reference to the democratically elected President of the United States. The Roman Catholic Church, Bishop, has lost its way.
I think the Roman Catholic Church and the established Anglican Church in the United Kingdom have lost their way on these things. They're advocating for social and political policies that are completely unsustainable and immensely damaging to the host nations. The fact that the Pope has now spoken out, as he said, the world is being run by a handful of tyrants. Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is either the rise of globalism, which we're seeing pushed by the European Union, the WEF, WHO, and other organizations, or with a push towards the globalization of the intifada, as so many want, and seeing a world run under Sharia law. And
Bishop, Bishop, can you confirm that open borders is an un-Christian idea?
Completely, and it goes against, particularly looking at the Roman Catholic Church, it goes against the Church's social teaching, which has structured the entire Catholic ethos since the Second Vatican Council. The responsibility of the Church is to uphold the independency of the nation state and its ability to look after its citizens, and wherever feasible and ethical and responsible, we should care for the strangers, the orphans, the widows, the sojourners. That's, biblical language for foreigners, and those coming to our shores. But we must never advocate for that at the expense of the citizenry of the nation. And sadly, what is happening at the moment is we have a Pope now advocating for it, Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop of York, and bishops in the Church of England, Church of Wales, advocating for open borders. We see other clergy advocating for it. It is a completely unsustainable and unbiblical position. The Bible does not eradicate nations. It enforces them and it empowers them, and it leads them to the surrender of their governance by Christian teaching, by Christian morality. And to have an open borders policy is to throw that aside and reject the very presence of the idea of nations given to us by Scripture.
Bishop, I think that the Pope has lost his way and the Roman Catholic Church has lost its way to such an extent. I think at a certain point it's not inconceivable that they will move on abortion.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. I'm glad they're holding the line at the moment. And as the world is seeing, the American bishops seem to be far more conservative on that respect than the Pope and certainly European bishops. The problem is, both in Anglicanism and Catholicism, from the 60s onward, we've had a rise of liberalist agendas because of who is in charge of the governance of both organizations, and a deliberate move away from the foundations of the Christian faith and the sanctity of human life. And now we are seeing the mess that we're in. And for those of us that hold true to the foundational truths of Christianity and the doctrine of the church that has held us to in truth for 2 millennia, we're the ones labeled as fanatics and fundamentalists and far right and dangerous and every other label that we're given under the sun, when the reality is we are holding true to what Scripture teaches us, and in particular, when you look at abortion, holding true to the foundational truth of the dignity and sanctity of life from conception, not from birth, from conception. And, you know, I see liberals banding around this whole thing of genocide, talking about Gaza, talking about, you know, what's happening in Iran and goodness knows what. The biggest genocide ever committed has been abortion.
And it's millions of babies. Bishop, briefly before you go, we're so grateful to have you with us today. Were you offended by Donald Trump's posting of an AI image of himself as Jesus?
I thought it was a step too far. I'm glad he's deleted it. But I'm also mindful of the fact that all the liberals losing their mind over him posting the image were not so quick to issue such public scathing and rebuke of the multiple images of Obama posted as Messiah and wearing the crown of thorns and various other images that were posted. So I find the public outrage on it somewhat of a double standard. Personally, I was upset. I'm glad he's removed it.
The selective moral blindness of the progressive left. Bishop, always a joy to have you on the programme. A blessing, dare I say it. Bishop Kai H. Dewar, FSHC. Do look him up online. Brilliant broadcaster and, of course, a leading cleric as well and a spiritual leader. Grace is in London. Hello, Grace.
Hi.
What do you think about this row between the Pope and the President of the United States?
I'm instinctively not a spiritual person, so I used to think that the idea of Jesus having risen from the death was bizarre. But when I looked into it in detail, I found there's quite a good historical case for it. Now, if it is the case that Jesus really rose from the dead, then that matters more than any of the arguments that we get into. My point being, not that these arguments aren't very interesting, because they are, but I don't want anyone to think that if they don't agree with the Pope or they don't agree with me, that that's really the ultimate thing. Because the ultimate thing is choosing to follow Jesus because he offers life after death. I'm frustrated that Trump has tried again and again to align himself with Christianity because he knows it will get him votes, when a lot about what he says and does demonstrates that he's not actually trying himself to follow Jesus. For instance, when he deleted the picture that we talked about, he immediately lied. He said he thought it was him as a doctor. We all know that that's a lie.
I was surprised that Donald didn't own that one.
And I think that it's really important that, you know, following Jesus doesn't just mean saying I'm a Christian. A lot of people in this country might say that they're Christians because of heritage, but following Jesus means that you really want to follow his guidance. He's given the best teachings.
Is it a problem, though, Grace? Is it a problem that the Pope is now a massive lefty?
I don't know how we even define left and right anymore. I mean, I've not seen the Pope say anything that's particularly supportive of same-sex sexual relationships or transgenderism or abortion. So I don't know to what extent you should be concerned about him being too liberal on that front. The Pope is right to call for compassion for people who are in really difficult situations, and the Bible does make that really clear. We do need to have compassion for people who are less privileged than ourselves, including people from other places. That's the point of the parable of the Good Samaritan. So when the Pope says that or implies that Trump is making a mess of the world, I'm not sure I wholly disagree. I'm not a Catholic, but I recently went to a couple of Catholic services because I was volunteering with Mary's Meals, which is an amazing organisation, and it provides school meals to kids in the poorest parts of the world incredibly cost effectively. You can feed a child for 10 pence. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
So I'd gone to volunteer, and I was in this Catholic service, and it was really lovely to see how, you know, people there, like people in the other Christian communities that I'm more often in, really do care about human beings who are in need. And that's what Jesus told us to do. So if Trump's going to completely ignore that idea, the Pope is right to say that that's not very Christian of him.
Grace, thank you so much. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. We're going to get to more of your calls next. Have the establishment broken Britain? This is Talk.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday.
Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Ian Collins this week and next, plus weekend breakfast as always, Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Have the establishment broken Britain? Michael is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Michael.
Good afternoon. I would just like to say, you asked the question, when are we going to get growth back?
Yeah.
When are we going to get common sense back? We won't get it back until this Muppet show comes to an end. Why pick one subject? There's not one subject they can deal with, and it's embarrassing. I'm 74 years old, and I've never, ever seen a worse government, and I'm not into politics in a heavy way, but I'm embarrassed for the first time by our government. They're an absolute disgrace for any subject you want to bring up. That's my talk for today.
Well, Michael, I can't disagree with you, because everything has worsened since they achieved power. The illegal immigration has gone up, growth has disappeared, inflation is going up, unemployment has returned.
But the problem is they just don't listen to anybody. We need oil and gas. It's on our doorstep. So what's the excuse they make? It's too expensive to do. It would cost the same. OK, but it's on our doorstep. It will bring employment. Companies will pay tax. What is wrong with them? What are they waiting for? We have a worldwide emergency and they are doing nothing.
And why would you say that is, Michael? Why are they not listening?
Because they have the wrong person in charge of energy. And Starmer is frightened because he'll lose his position. He's probably threatened them with an election if they try to take him out. And the whole thing is embarrassing. Our defence, our industries, our businesses, the cost. I mean, cancelling the two-child benefit. Do you think the children are going to get more money? It will encourage people who are not working to have more children. Not all of them, but I bet a big percentage, because they think they're going to get more money. Not for the children, for themselves.
I completely agree. There's no evidence.
Ridiculous.
There's no evidence that lifting the two-child benefit cap. There's no evidence that lifting the two-child benefit cap is going to actually tackle child poverty. Michael, do you think that things will improve at the next election?
Oh, I think our politics is up the creek at the moment. It's a shame the Conservatives are a lot bit more stronger. I thought Reform might be a replacement, but they seem to be very inconsistent. There's no clear path. The Green Party, who are just something from Monty Python, I don't know how people are voting for them. I don't think they understand who they are.
Yeah.
I'm frightened that there's going to be split voting among all the parties, and Labour might even get in again because of it.
Tactical voting, yeah.
I think we have to encourage people who don't vote. The local MPs have got to stress it's very important for everyone to vote. And this is going to be a big deal with local and main elections. I think people have really got to take more interest. Otherwise, the wrong people are going to get in.
I agree with that. Michael, great call. Mary has called the programme. Good afternoon, Mary.
Afternoon, Mark.
Can we talk about these lawyers who are telling migrants to pretend to be gay or to pretend to have domestic abuse in order to stay in the country? What would you do with them?
Well, I would definitely... I've said for a long time they should cut the legal aid anyway, and these people should only be allowed one sort of time to go, appeal, and that's it, if it's not... But lawyers, to me now, they used to be regarded as professionals, and you respected them because they were a lawyer. Now I'm beginning to wonder if the whole lot of them, from top to bottom, judges included, are just so... They're professional liars. That's all they are now.
Wow.
They lie to the defendant to pretend that they're going to, or the claimant or whatever it is. They lie to the person who's they're prosecuting, even if they think they're innocent. They lie to the person they're defending, even if they know they're guilty. It's all lies, lies, lies. And Starmer is at the head of the top.
Mary, thank you for that. Succinct and powerful as ever. Mary in Hemel Hempstead, who is beginning to think that all lawyers are professional liars. I mean, that's one issue with the Prime Minister. He is a former human rights lawyer. And I think that's what's caused a problem in Parliament. When he's asked questions by Kemi Badenoch, he gives a lawyer's answer, which is even worse than a politician's answer. Because don't forget, a lawyer will take on the case of someone that they know is guilty of the crime, and they'll be happily paid and bankrolled to make their case, even though they know they're guilty. That's the problem with lawyers. Folks, lots to get through in the next hour. So many messages coming through. Has the establishment broken Britain? Anger grows in Epsom because, of course, there was this most appalling crime, the gang rape of a young woman, and the public want to know who the suspects are, what their background is. Do they have a right to have that information? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Has the establishment broken Britain?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This really is the best job in the world, thanks to you. I am Mark Dolan, in for the brilliant Ian Collins, on the home of Common Sense Talk, and breaking this afternoon, anger grows in Epsom as the police refuse to reveal details of the alleged suspects linked to a shocking attack on a local woman. So should the authorities be forced to reveal the ethnicity and background of alleged suspects? Do the police need to be more straight with the public? Meanwhile, is Keir Starmer losing the plot as he has an angry row with the Speaker of the House of Commons, bashing his fist on the table? Is the pressure being felt by the PM? Meanwhile, the fallout from a BBC investigation into crooked human rights lawyers and unregulated advisors coaching asylum seekers into gaming the system, pretending they're gay, pretending they come from an abusive domestic setting in order to remain in the country. What should happen to these people? Should they be jailed? And whether it's net zero, open borders, woke policing, wokery in our public institutions, a left-wing judiciary. Have the establishment broken Britain? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Or bad news for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, because the UK is raising taxes at the fastest pace in the world, according to the International Monetary Fund. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going to cost households £4,500 more, according to the IMF. Let's get reaction now from Callum Price, who is the Director of Communications at the IEA and former government special advisor. Hello, Callum.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm very well. What's gone wrong? Why has this befallen the Chancellor, do you think?
Well, this is basically the result of a government that doesn't have any ideas. This is trying to cover the costs of an ever-expanding state because the welfare bill's going up. The pension triple lock makes sure that the welfare bill on that side keeps rising as well, not least other spending pledges that the government has made. But basically, this was the trajectory of government spending that the government inherited. They had no ideas what to do about it other than quite reasonably that they want to keep the books balanced. So they've just had to keep hiking taxes again and again and again to keep up with it. They haven't had any overall look at what they think the state should be doing, what they think it should be doing better, what they think it should maybe stop doing so that we can keep prices down and taxes down for everybody. They've just sort of gone, oh, we don't really know what to do, but we need to make it add up, so we'll just keep hiking taxes on the people that they said they wouldn't, i.e. working people and families and businesses. And this is the outcome. And the costs are quite clear. It's a falling and a low growth standards for the UK economy going forwards. The IMF have, at the same time as saying the UK is raising taxes faster than anybody else, also gave it the biggest growth downgrade in the G7. I think those two things might be linked. But also, it's less money in people's pockets. It's less jobs for people because businesses, it's more expensive to employ people, and falling living standards across the board. The government needs to get a grip of the increased spending that it is committed to, but it fails to do so at every turn.
Most definitely. Was it Winston Churchill, Callum, who said you cannot tax your way to prosperity?
Yep, I think it might have been. You certainly can't. It's impossible to do. We know this. We really do. And to be fair to this government, their predecessors weren't great at it either. This is the end of a long tradition of governments that have struggled and frankly failed to grip the burgeoning problems that are becoming ever more clear in our society. We need to have a proper think about what the government is there to do. What is the role of the welfare state and as a whole? How can we possibly afford to keep spending that much money on it? How can we possibly afford to keep rising pensions? Meanwhile, there's a huge black hole on the defence side when at a time when we desperately need to have a strong national posture on the international stage. So these are fundamental questions that the government is basically running from. Every time they've tried to approach it, they did try and do some welfare cuts, some relatively modest welfare cuts last year. And because they were elected on basically a platform of, oh, we're actually just the nice guys, they got defeated by their own party on that. So I don't know where the solution is going to come from this government, but they need to find one and find it quick.
Most definitely, because we can't tax any further. We can't borrow any more money. The cost of servicing the interest on the debt alone is over £100 billion a year. The only serious lever to pull is to cut public spending, but that is politically unpalatable for the Chancellor.
It absolutely is, but it has to be done, frankly, and they have to find a way to sell it. This is what I mean about a government that has no plan. If a government, there is room, the public already, we at the IEA have done some polling this week on what the public wants from their economy, and they want growth, right? They're ready for growth, they want growth, and they're willing to accept some difficult things to force to get that. But the government isn't writing that narrative. It's not saying this is the path to prosperity. It's just it's basically refusing to make any decisions at all, which is the real problem. But we can't keep going on this way. But there doesn't seem to be any other options on the table. But the problem is, part of that polling that we did as well this week was that the UK thinks it's a lot richer than it actually is. If you were asked to ask people, where would you rank the UK on GDP per capita, so that's basically average incomes, if the UK was a US state, and people generally thought we'd be about 7th, so probably behind New York, maybe behind the sort of outlying states, but actually pretty prosperous. The truth is, if we were a US state, we would be 51st in terms of GDP per capita. That's 51st. That is the poorest of all US states. That is shocking, and it needs to be fixed.
Yes, we would be poorer than Michigan, home to Detroit, which, as we know, has been hollowed out in recent decades. Winston Churchill was indeed the author of that famous quote about taxation, Callum. He said, for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle. If taxing people to oblivion worked, everyone would be doing it.
Well, that's exactly right, and we simply know that it doesn't. If we could just keep taxing, there is a thing called the Laffer curve, which is if you keep taxing, then people will just stop working or stop starting businesses. I mean, we can debate where that line of the Laffer curve stands, and it sort of goes up and down depending, but it does exist, and it gets to a point where if you tax so much, then economic activity is disincentivized. It is, and we're seeing the costs bear out. Much of the taxes that the government has introduced has gone onto businesses and employment. They've raised the national insurance threshold for the national insurance level, for businesses hiring people, which makes it more expensive to hire people. And lo and behold, fewer people are being hired. Unemployment is over 5% now. Like these things are quite clear. People follow incentives, and if you make it more expensive to do things, people are going to do less of it. It's just that simple. If you cut taxes and make it cheaper for people to do things, then people will do more of it. People will start businesses. People will work that extra few hours to get a bit of a pay rise. But to cut taxes, you need to cut spending, and that's where the government just doesn't have any plans at all.
Well, it seems what's happened, Callum, in the last 18 months under this new administration is we've had a lot of politics and very little sound economics. That's the problem. Politics has prevailed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You saw it in the 2024 election. If you cast your mind back to when Keir Starmer was running what they called the Ming-Val strategy, they basically knew they were going to win that election, and they very purposefully didn't commit much policy agenda, many policy ideas, because they thought there's no point in risking it. We saw what happened to Theresa May in 2017 when she came out with some policy ideas when she was supposed to win a landslide, and then suddenly people ripped those ideas apart, and that majority disappeared. They thought, we'll just be the nice guys, we're just going to say we're not the Tories and that we'll do it better, and we'll carry this victory across the line. So they got into government with a huge majority and no ideas at all, from what I can see. They talked a very good game, and to their credit, a very good game about prioritising economic growth, but 18 months in, we are yet to see the fruits of that labour at all. I don't know what their growth strategy is. I don't know where they think it's going to come from. They've done some good stuff on planning, so they deserve some credit for that, but it hasn't been nearly far enough, and they have they've shot themselves in the foot on other things with the tax rises on businesses, with the tax rises on employers and employees, and with the Employment Rights Act as well, which again makes it more expensive to hire people. So there is really no overarching economic philosophy other than let's do what the unions want us to do. There's a lot of that, and that comes into the Employment Rights Act. A bit of good stuff on planning, but really no overarching sound economic philosophy. And we're seeing the cost of that borne out, and it's falling on the backs of working people and businesses, and they're the ones paying the price ultimately.
Well, what about this? This is a story from the 2010s and the Chancellor George Osborne, Callum. Corporation tax was cut sharply in the 2010s, but onshore corporation tax receipts rose by £16.5 billion. The taxes came down, the tax receipts went up.
Exactly, and this is the laughing curve I was talking about. Sometimes you can't tax so much that you get so much less of something. You disincentivize that thing so much that you actually get less money, and that happened with that corporation tax that you've mentioned. It happens as well at the moment with lots of the taxes, the sort of nanny state taxes we have on tobacco and gambling and alcohol and things. We're now at the level where if you raise more taxes on those things, you actually get less revenue. Now we can't overblow. To be fair, we can't overblow the consequences of that. It is generally the case that if you hike a tax, you will normally get more money of it, unless it's right at that peak, which it definitely can be. But if you look at the overall dynamic effects in an economy, not just of that specific thing, but of what is the knock-on effect from cutting that tax on what people want to do, the best example of this, I think, is stamp duty. Stamp duty is a punitive tax on when you move house. When you buy a new house, you have to pay a big whack of tax on that. So it disincentivizes people moving house. Now, if you cut that, I don't know what the exact numbers are, and I don't think we could quite claim it would fully pay for itself by any means, but there would be all sorts of dynamic effects. People would move house, which means they could get to places where they were more productive, they could get higher paid jobs, families could move into places that fit them, people could downsize, and elderly people could downsize and go to places that were more suitable for them, and the overall dynamic effects on the economy are really and can be really serious. So there's a much wider case for having a much more sensible tax regime, but again, there just doesn't seem to be any thinking inside government at the moment, either politically or in the institutions, the OBR, the Treasury, etc., of the wholesale dynamic economic effects of tax cuts.
And I'm not suggesting or proposing, Callum, that we should become Dubai. I believe there's a sweet spot where taxes are high enough to pay for infrastructure and public services and defence, but not so high that they damage the economy. That is the sweet spot, and we've been very far away from that sweet spot for a long, long time.
We absolutely have. And I mean, I think we can learn a lot from Dubai, to be honest. I mean, we may not want to go the whole hog, but again, this comes back to what I was saying earlier about what is the Labour government's idea of what the state should be doing. And I think we could all agree on some pretty basic things, right? We think there should be a police service, for example. We definitely think that the state should be doing more on defence. That's sort of protecting our national security is basically the number one role of the state. We think there's definitely a role for state involvement, state funding of healthcare and education and things like that. And there probably is a role for some form of welfare state. But actually, is it the state's job to bail everybody out of every single problem that they arise? No, it's not. Is it the state's job to constantly make sure that pensioners get higher and higher and higher pension increase every year, no matter what the economic conditions are or what everybody else is getting? I'm not sure it is. Is it the state's job to be administering a welfare state to the size that we have? I'm not sure it is, but nobody seems to be willing in the current government to have a proper conversation about that. I mean, there's lots of talk about, we need to reform welfare. Wes Streeting said some things today about potentially looking at the welfare budget, but we need a bit more of a radical look at what the state's role is.
Yes.
And actually what the role of families and individuals are, because they are the responsible units in a society. It's about the individuals and the families. The state is there to be a safety net and to make sure that the rule of law is in place and the government's borders are protected and national security is safe. But actually, we need to put more responsibility back on individuals and the family, I would say.
Well, yes, in the United States, welfare is just not viable as a way of supporting a family. So it's far better to work. You are incentivized to work in the United States, and it's the biggest economy in the world. Callum, I really enjoyed your company. Do join us again soon. Callum Price is the Director of Communications at the IEA and former government special advisor. Let's take a voice note, I should say. I've been asking today, have the establishment broken Britain, whether it's net zero, whether it's a woke judiciary, whether it's politically correct two-tier policing, whether it's open borders, have the establishment broken Britain? Here is a voice note from Phil in Nottingham.
You asked if the establishment had broken Britain, and the answer is no, not yet. Because at the end of the day, Britain is not so much the island that we live on, but the people that occupy it. The British people are what make Britain what it is, and they haven't been broken yet. The unfortunate thing is that the British people are being diluted. So it is breaking. And if it carries on the way things are going, it won't be Britain anymore.
Well, that's it. Phil, I couldn't have put it better. 10 times better than my dispatch. You nailed it. Thank you for your voice note. Here's James in Kent on corrupt lawyers.
I think all this talk about these slightly dodgy lawyers or legal advisors that the BBC have uncovered is part of the story. But I don't think we should be ignoring charities like Care for Calais, who are actually established in the camps in northern France. They're not just dishing out food and water. I'm sure they have legal advisors or other advisors on how to game the system as well. And of course, they're receiving a lot of public money to support them, which is iniquitous. Anyway, loving the show. Bye.
Thank you for a very articulate voice note, and you're right to mention these charities. They are part of this woke infrastructure that is keeping people in the country who shouldn't be here. Thank you, James. Thank you, Phil. Have the establishment broken Britain? More of your calls next.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday.
Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Have the establishment broken Britain? Well, Tony in Edinburgh has got a novel idea to deal with politicians. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How is Old Reekie this afternoon?
Dry and sunny, which is pretty unusual.
I know. Well, I love that city. I got my education up there, Tony. One of the most beautiful places, especially for a pint.
There's some amazing places to go. You can have a relatively cheap night out, and you can have an expensive posh night out.
Yeah, each to their own.
Got it all.
I particularly like the Cowgate and Bannerman's and all the rest of it. Happy memories. Well, listen, Tony, I've got to say, I want to drown my sorrows because I feel the country is going down the toilet. What's your view?
Well, my view is for politicians, and I don't really care what colour, I would make this apply to all of them. When I say colour, I don't want to get into trouble. I mean political colour.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'd find out what the average age is for each constituency, and I'd put the MP on that from that constituency on that wage, the average wage.
Wow.
Now, if they then have an increase in investment into the area, they get a percentage pay rise. If they get crime down in that area, they get a percentage pay rise. If they get the NHS sorted in that area with access to GPs, appointment times down, they get a percentage pay rise. If they get truancy down in school, they get a percentage pay rise. So it incentivizes them, the same as those of us who work in the private sector, to take an interest in what we do and then boost our own pay, and it will make them competitive and representative.
Well, I like that idea because I know they have accountability every 5 years, but they don't have day-to-day accountability, and the best way to focus minds is to hit them in the wallet.
Absolutely so. And you could have constituencies right next to each other where you've got MPs from a certain party who are on more money than the neighbouring MP on the constituency because he's done better in that constituency.
Tony, a novel idea. Fascinating stuff. I definitely think that we should have performance-related pay when it comes to our politicians. Tony's idea is quite interesting. To hit that median wage of the average age of the constituent is a very interesting idea. Or what about linking their income to national growth? Imagine if we had growth of 5%, they get a bonus. How about that? Tony, thank you for your rather interesting call. I think that's what we should do on this channel and on this show, is use this platform as an opportunity to think outside the box and have some fresh ideas, because obviously you know that I'm pushing for the wipeout of the establishment because I think they are breaking Britain. The only issue is if you're going to get rid of them, what do you replace it with? You're going to need new people and fresh ideas. Richard is in the capital. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Mark. Good to talk to you again. I'm just thinking about this issue about, well, as you say, the in a way, the breaking of the social contract that we've seen. I've said to Ian before that I think that one of the parties, certainly the left, have been essentially trying to make a new country over the last sort of 50, 60 years. The levels of immigration that Labour have encouraged, really going back even to 1948, and the levels of in the increase of the state that they've encouraged as well. It makes me believe that essentially they're trying to create a different sort of country, a much more state-dependent and really a much more, as we said, I think yesterday or the day before, a multicultural society that nobody really wanted.
Yeah.
But my idea is that the thing is that at the moment we have what the French president called El Dorado. We have a very generous welfare system, and of course people will abuse it, and the people that are claiming that the asylum seekers are claiming that they are that they're gay, etc. This will happen. I think what we need to get on the agenda is effectively, Mark, to phase out the welfare state as it was created in 1948 or 1945. When you think about it, you can get different sorts of tariff for your mobile phone, can't you? You can basically shop around.
Yeah.
But with a welfare system, you have to pay effectively. There's a gigantic monster of a system, and basically you pay into it. If we were able to say to the state, well, look, I only want sort of basic sickness or basic or basic unemployment cover, a bit like we had in 1906 with the original Lloyd George, the first Lloyd George welfare state. Essentially, what you'd be saying is, well, look, I'll pay in so much and I'll get so much out of it. And if people were able to do that, frankly, Mark, there'd be a lot less money in the pot. So the point is, the politicians would be. They wouldn't. The people who take advantage of the system wouldn't be able to do so because simply the money wouldn't be there. And effectively, what we're doing with this is we're saying to the politicians, you've broken the social contract and Britain is unrecognisable. And we're saying, OK, we're going to take control back. We're going to start to take the money out. If you think about it, Mark, the origins, the origins of America, were British people saying, "Well, we're leaving. We're leaving we're leaving England. We're leaving Britain because we have an overmighty king who's taxing us too much. So we're going to create a new world." And in a funny way, Mark, it seems to me that Britain's we're almost facing the same sort of challenge. We've got to say to politicians, "You've created a different sort of society. You didn't ask us about this.
Yes.
We've got to find some way." But Mark, it'll have to be dramatic. But for instance, if you think about it, the state depends dramatically on the sort of top 1% of earners. If those people all left anyway, the state would effectively collapse.
Which they are starting to do.
Yes.
But if it happened unilaterally, I mean, I love what you're saying, Richard. This is exactly what we should be doing on this channel, is looking at the future. If we're going to get rid of the establishment and we're going to tear up the rule book, you've got to look at things like the Refugee Convention when it comes, and ECHR when it comes to the boats. But you've got to look at welfare when it comes to the economy. So, Richard, what you're suggesting briefly, because I need to get to Jane in Derbyshire, but you're suggesting, for example, you could say to HMRC, I'm going to pay 15% tax, not 45%. I'm going to pay 15% tax, but I do not need non-urgent NHS, and I don't need a school place. So you can basically go for kind of welfare light and pay less tax. That's the sort of thing you're suggesting. Yes,
and it would probably mean, Mark, that you would say you wouldn't be entitled to, for instance, benefits like universal credit or housing benefits.
You opt out of that and pay less tax.
Yes.
I mean, it's genius.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Mark, I think one of the difficulties is you haven't got someone like Margaret, of course, Thatcher, Keith Joseph. I think the other thing that concerns me a bit is that both Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch, they appear to be going for gimmicks like this idea of some sort of an inquiry into the Boris rave, or Kemi's idea about trying to deport the parents of Uruda Cabana, which she knows will never happen. And I think we've got to get our leaders, if you like, the leaders of the Conservatives and Reform, the people that are going to change things, to think really outside of the box.
I agree, and unilateral change. I mean, a revolution, Richard. Richard, we need to continue that conversation. You've got to call me back so we can finish it. Part 2 is coming. Richard, thank you for your creative thoughts. Lefty lawyers. Jane is in Derbyshire. Hello, Jane. How are you? Let me put my teeth back in. Hello, Jane.
Hello.
Right, now, I'm very well indeed. What do you make of what's happened here with lawyers advising asylum seekers to pretend to be gay? What's going on?
Well, put it like this. I worked for the Immigration Appeals Court back in the early I think it was around 2003, 2004, about 20 years ago.
Right.
And I was a court clerk, and it was well-known practice that the lawyers would advise their clients as to what to say to the adjudicator on their appeal.
So this has been going on for 2 decades?
Oh, more than that, I'm pretty sure. The solicitors, I mean, I have got no proof, only my own memories. I know that there was one particular case, and I sat there and I actually stayed in the court for it and listened to it. And the adjudicator said to me afterwards, he said, "What did you think?" And I sort of came out with, "Well, it sounds very much like the last one. It sounds very much like almost word for word, blah, blah, blah." And he just looked at me and sort of went, And I think even the adjudicators knew that there was some sort of... But because that's what was told in court, they couldn't... And it ticked all the boxes that the adjudicators had to tick to allow them to stay. That's why they were all granted. But there were lawyers there that were there. That was their job, 24/7. They'd be just churning them through the courts. So it's nothing new. It's been going on for years. And as I say, I must admit, I saw it myself. Not everyone got through, but the majority, and the stories were so very similar.
And over decades, that's going to be hundreds of thousands of people who remain in the country who probably do not have a legal case to do so, Jane.
Some may have legitimate cases. And in a way, I suppose those that did have legitimate cases, their cases are therefore undermined by the fact that there are copycat cases coming through. So, if you look at the balance of it, some of those awful things did happen to these people, or if they went back, some awful things might happen to them. But because that was proven, then people are jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, well, that's happened to me, or that could happen to me, therefore I've got to stay. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, based upon what you've said and the conversation that we've had today with a couple of experts as well, Jane, you're one of those because you've been there and you've witnessed it at first hand.
I'm not an expert, though.
Well, I mean, you've obviously seen it with your own eyes, working within the legal profession, and I think the two predominant themes appear to be a culture of corruption and activism, and this brings the legal profession into disrepute.
I would say so, yes.
And that's a problem, isn't it? That's not a great place to be if you can't trust lawyers and judges.
Well, the thing is, I would say it's not the judges, it's they're called adjudicators. I would say it's not necessarily them because their guidelines are to go on the evidence that the lawyers put forward.
They don't have that much agency. They're presented with the evidence and then they make a judgment.
So, of course, if they're presented with the facts that, this person would, this, that and that would happen to them if they went back, they can't just say, well, I don't believe you, because it's done in the court. So they have to take that on trust or, on face value. It's the manipulation behind, I think, is where the rot is.
It's horrible. I mean, briefly, Jane, clock's against me. Can it be fixed? What do we do about this?
I honestly don't know, because I think it's so ingrained.
I know, it feels like the civil service, there needs to be a clear out, but I don't know how you do that.
I don't know whether you can ever get rid of the rot.
My goodness.
It's in there. I know that sounds dramatic, but I think it's in there somewhere. There is, I suppose the motivation for some could be for good. Maybe the solicitors are convinced or whatever, I don't know.
Pathological empathy, misguided.
And money. Because they get paid. And the thing is, they get legal aid and things like that. So the solicitor's going to get paid one way or the other. So, and if he gets a good result, then the next one is going to come to them. Well, you've got my friend off. Can you get me through? It's
Jane,
a business.
It is a business. I'd love you to call me again when any legal matter comes up, because, you're basically the show's Judge Judy as far as I'm concerned. Judge Jane.
Judge Jane. Well, basically, I've been sitting here seizing about that report when it came out, and I thought, why are they suddenly so surprised now? This has been going on for years.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've...
That's what motivated me to call.
Well, it's a great thing that you did. Let's catch up again soon. Thank you, Judge Jane. You are listening. You have a great Thursday. Brilliant. You see, you guys are the experts because you live in the real world. You've seen it with your own eyes. I have entrepreneurs calling the show. I have, former, clerks in the legal profession. You name it. You have the intel, so you've always got to share it with me. That's what's special about this place. It's the most interactive current affairs platform in the country by far. More to come. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's the highlight of the week when we talk tech with a very, very special man indeed. I'm delighted to welcome Sean Keach, who is the head of science and technology at the Sun newspaper. Sean, I saw you last week and it was very interesting, our conversation about technology and streaming giants. And then you were just having a wander around Covent Garden, I think, the same day, and you saw me yelling into a smartphone.
Were you live streaming or something?
I was. I have a YouTube channel which is based around royal gossip called Mark Dolan Show. Rather popular.
I still more in on it. I hope it didn't ruin the
2.5 million
stream.
views a month. No, you actually enhanced it, and a lot of my viewers thought you were very handsome.
Oh, that's very kind.
And you are. Wasted on the radio. So listen, let's get to some not top royal stories here. Back in my.
I can do my best.
Let's talk about the Fire Stick from Amazon. What is it and what's happened?
Oh, so they've done a brand new TV, and it is quite expensive. So we're going to put that up front. It's about 900 quid. I think it's 950, but it looks like a painting. So most TVs, when you see them, they have a reflective screen. This TV has a matte screen, so when it's on your wall, it's got like 2,000 pieces of art loaded onto it, and so it just looks like you're walking in to a room with a painting in it, and it's meant to solve that problem, I think, of when you go into rooms and there's just this giant sort of black thing on the wall, and it sort of feels a bit like it dominates the space. Not very good, but I mean, there's a bit of footage there. You can swap out the frames. It looks like a painting. It's pretty good. It elevates the room, I think.
I think it's a really good idea because there's sometimes a bit of snobbery about a big telly.
Absolutely.
And therefore, if it's just a watercolour by John Constable or a Picasso, then happy days.
People are going to think you're very cultural. It's great. Oh, exactly. And it also functions as a TV as well, which is, a bonus.
And what happens? Does it mean it stays on, and therefore, I mean, is it using energy when it's on? Do you know?
Yeah, but not as much as you would expect.
No, it'll be like the always-on display of your iPhone.
Exactly.
Minimum trickle. Can you put your kids' artwork on there? Is the million-dollar question.
Oh, I don't know. I suppose you probably could upload because they've got a huge library, but then you can put your own pictures on as well. So if they've done something particularly impressive that you want to show your guests, go for it.
Apparently, Samsung did this previously. Is this any better?
Samsung has done one called The Frame, and it's very similar. So, I mean, you can sort of pick and choose. It depends which operating system you like. People do like the Fire TVs from Amazon because it works just like the Fire Sticks. Samsung's also very fast. I don't want to pick or choose. They're both good.
The advantage of Amazon hardware is it tends to be cheaper, doesn't it? Because it's not one of the premium brands. So it's always been the case back in the day that the Amazon tablets were way cheaper than an iPad. So that's one advantage. That $950 sounds a lot, but it's probably in relative terms quite good for what you're getting.
For this caliber of TV, and especially one with a matte screen that doesn't have those reflections. But you're right, you can get huge TVs now for very, very cheap. Especially at Black Friday, you can get 4K TVs, 65-inch for 300 quid, which, when you think maybe in like the early noughties when you were buying a TV of that size, it would have been thousands of pounds, people getting these massive plasma screens. Very different times now.
You're far too young to remember this, but back in the day, TVs used to be hidden inside furniture because there's always been a snobbery about tellies in the living room. And so the equivalent of Hyacinth Bouquet from Keeping Up Appearances would have a telly that had this sort of fold-out wooden doors. And inside was the TV hidden.
There's something quite nice about that, I think.
I think it's charming. I think it's brilliant. Well, look, there you go. If you've got the money, good luck and go for it. Tell me about smart glasses from Apple.
So Apple, the rumour is that they are working on some smart glasses. So you've probably seen these Meta glasses. Meta, the company that owns Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has these glasses with cameras built in. They can analyse what you're looking at and tell you about it. So if I look at a famous piece of art, it'll tell me all about it. Apple apparently is going to do the same thing. They're going to reveal it later this year and then release it next year. So you'll be able to look at stuff and then ask Siri. I don't want to say Siri in case it triggers people's phones, but you could ask their AI assistant questions about what you're looking at and it could tell you. So basically trying to remove that friction of sometimes, you don't want to take your phone out of your pocket, take pictures of stuff. You can just do it from your face. Obviously, lots of people are thinking, are there privacy concerns? And yes, probably. I think it probably rightfully worries people, the idea that we'll all be walking around with cameras on our faces.
Although if there's one company that's really big on privacy, it is Apple.
Absolutely. Apple has done a great job, certainly with iPhone privacy. Meta has come under a lot of criticism because people have been using it to sort of film themselves interacting with women, trying to hit on them and then uploading it to YouTube. So, I mean, it's very difficult to resolve that issue because people will always find ways to do bad things with technology. But I mean, there are certainly some good use cases for it as well.
Are there any actual normal people that will use these smart glasses?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, for me and you, we wear glasses anyway, so I suppose it's not a huge leap. I think getting the general public to wear glasses all the time is going to be a bit of a stretch, especially if they've got cameras. You know, you don't want to be wearing those at home necessarily. You might worry about the privacy. I think it's probably our best hope of putting tech on our face because it's quite a nice size. I think when you think of like VR headsets, very bulky. People don't want to put those on for a long time, but this isn't as invasive. Maybe one day it'll be contact lenses.
Well, that's right.
Or brain chips.
I mean, I'm ready now. I could do with one. There's plenty of space in there. The VR headset, that is essentially a device that you put on your face and you're completely immersed in a digital world.
Absolutely.
You essentially put a screen in front of your eyes.
And the Apple one is so good, but again, it's like £3,500, and the visual quality is stunning. But ultimately, like, people just don't want to wear them for a long period of time.
I mean, would you describe Apple's VR devices as a flop or just a very good device that people didn't buy?
I think you're never going to get mainstream appeal with a device that's that expensive, that is that big. But ultimately, it was a very impressive device, and people who bought them were relatively happy with them. But they're not for everyone.
They've not escalated it. It's not become, you know, a mainstream product.
No, absolutely not. And I don't think it ever will. I think really what you want to see is the products converge so that you have glasses like this that have the same visual quality as the VR headset. But that's a little way away.
What about Sir Keir Starmer, who is very concerned about social media and is taking measures?
We're all concerned about social media. So Keir Starmer today has summoned all of the tech bosses, or sort of, I suppose, like middle people in these tech companies. It wasn't Zuckerberg and Elon Musk that came down. From Meta, Snap, Google, TikTok and
Elon
X.
Musk would love a dressing down for the Prime Minister.
I'm sure he would. So he's basically told all these companies today, things cannot go on like this. And he's basically saying that they need to crack down on children using their websites and seeing improper content. Now, in the background to this, the government is running this consultation, I think it ends at the end of May, on whether we should ban, like Australia, social media for under 16s, which is a very difficult topic because a lot of parents are saying, yes, we should totally ban social media for under 16s. The children's charities are the opposite. They're saying we shouldn't ban it. The social media is important for kids. They have communities, it helps with their development and education. And so you would think that they would be against it, but actually they don't want this ban. And so the government actually has voted down 2 amendments so far for the ban because they want their consultation to complete. So we might find out very soon whether there will be a ban for social media under 16s.
If there was, would that prevent an under 16-year-old going on ChatGPT or Claude to gather information?
Potentially, and actually the AI companies have started adding parental controls to their chatbots now because it is becoming an issue. It's difficult to say whether they will.
Because I've got 2 sons and they learn a lot from AI because they look things up. It's another form of reading if you get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should make the same argument, I suppose, for TikTok. Because there's loads of educational content on TikTok. Obviously, there's not some great stuff too, so it's difficult. And sometimes you think, is this actually more of a parenting issue? Is this something that the tech companies to get right? I don't know if an outright ban is necessarily the right thing. And, you know, I sometimes feel uncomfortable about the government banning things anyway. So
I know
it's difficult.
What would be quite nice is to have a bit more parenting and a bit more control of these devices within families. We can but hope. I love a Rolls Royce. And it was actually really hard getting mine in the space today because Jeremy Kyle's Jag takes up, and it's enormous. Rolls-Royce have brought out a very, very special new electric car.
Yes, and the price hasn't been revealed, but the estimates are putting it somewhere between 3.5 million and 7 million. It's called Project Nightingale.
Sorry, did you say million?
Million!
Yikes.
Which, you know, I don't know, for a billionaire, I suppose it's quite a bargain. It's a 2-seater electric car. They're only making 100. Project Nightingale, I mean, it looks very good. You can see it in the pictures there. It's going to be a very special, but it's interesting because Rolls-Royce actually recently scrapped their pledge to be EV only by 2030. They're saying there's a lot of demand for their V12 engines. So although they are doing this electric Rolls-Royce, they're not going fully electric. They're still going to have petrol cars in the future.
It's a thing of beauty. It's one of the great British brands, is it not? And what about O2? They've got some April news.
Oh, yeah, so this is going to be a good reminder generally to check your phone networks. There's always benefits that people miss. O2 have revealed their April benefits. You can get £3 View Cinema tickets any day of the week, which is actually quite a rare perk. You can get some free chocolate bars from them, and they're doing an M&S giveaway where thousands of people can get sandwiches, baked goods. So go into your O2 app, check it. You might have some freebies waiting in there for you.
Number 1 for science and technology stories is The Sun newspaper, and its head of science and tech is Sean Keach. Sean, have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you in a week's time. The brilliant Sean Keach. Lots more to come. Your calls next. This is Talk.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday.
Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Many thanks to the team for working so hard this week. Amy and Sam and Jana, of course, Finley, Luke and Faith. We'll do it all again tomorrow, final show, but I'm here for 2 weeks and weekend breakfast, don't forget, from, I'm delighted to say, 6 a.m. So look, let's get to your calls now. I've been asking a simple question. Have the establishment broken Britain? Is Starmer part of that problem? Matt is in Cheshire. Hello, Matt.
Hi, good afternoon, Mark. Great show. Can I say your interview with the Bishop was exceptional?
Oh, thank you. Well, he's a very compelling man to listen to, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, to get things like that out in the wash is great.
I know.
I called about Starmer. I've written something while I was watching the show and the subjects you've covered in the show.
Yeah.
If I just read you this, if that's okay.
Go for it.
If you never create or give the time to stop and look, you will never truly see the truth that has been unfolding before you for decades. The future is already written and its direction decided. Unless there are mass movements to erase those that have decided the future, your future will be decided for you for the rest of your life.
My goodness, that is brilliant, Matt. I mean, that is a message for those that govern us, isn't it? And that is a message to the population to wake up.
I mean, that is more or less what I meant when I wrote it. And the other thing was, on your early talk about Keir Starmer's rant, it was only a few weeks ago he was literally shaking at the dispatch box and pinning his other hand down because it was shaking.
I remember that.
So it's not beyond the realms of possibility, knowing how pathetic Labour are, that this convoluted and staged attack to look like a tough guy.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say that because actually one of my listeners, Amanda, texted earlier. She thinks that Starmer may throw the towel in after the May elections.
I live in a Labour seat. Jonathan Reynolds' seat. Angela Rayner is next to me. We've had a Labour council for 47 years. And everybody I speak to, including pensioners who voted Labour all their life, they despise the Mark. And this is the end of a generation of... I just wrote something else as well. Two-party politics in Britain is just a race to the feeding trough at any cost while making Rome burn faster.
Wow. Matt, you really are... I feel like you're the poet laureate of the show. Those are really nice pieces of writing. And I think I'll go back to it. The core theme of what you said is we've got to wake up, folks, because this isn't working. Matt, call me again soon. I really enjoyed that conversation. On these special electronic glasses, right? They're called the Meta glasses. What's their official name? I'm going to look it up. They are called smart glasses. Lovely message from Colin in Norwich. Mark, a group of people that are using these smart glasses very effectively are blind and partially sighted people because you're effectively wearing accessibility on your face. They will read things for you like bus numbers, tell you about the world around you and enable you to use other apps to help with navigation and day-to-day life very effective. Colin, you're so right about that. These smart glasses are a fantastic support to people that can't see or who have limited sight. Bruce is in Glasgow. Hello, Bruce.
Hello, Mark. Hi. How are you doing?
I'm very well. What's on your mind?
Mark, I have a fairly straightforward solution to the horror that is Britain today. King Charles calls in Starmer, says, listen, Prime Minister, my subjects are very unhappy. The country is in a terrible mess. I'm going to dissolve Parliament and call a general election. Having done that, King Charles then abdicates on the grounds of ill health and hands over to William and Kate. Job done.
Well, Bruce, what you've said there and outlined is something that my viewers and listeners can only dream of, because they want change at the top.
Well, King Charles can provide that change if he's got the you-know-what to just do it. He has the power to do it, and I think we've got to a stage in this country where everything is such a mess that he's got to step in and do it.
Bruce, thank you for that. Again, an outside-the-box idea. We have some massive breaking news for you at 5 minutes to 4 here on Talk. Peter Mandelson failed his security vetting clearance, but the decision was overruled by the Foreign Office to ensure that he could take up his post as ambassador to the United States. This as revealed by Pippa Crerar at The Guardian newspaper. Folks, this is huge. This is a seismic story which will shake the foundations of Number 10. Don't forget, it was the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who signed off on the appointment of Peter Mandelson to the most important diplomatic role in the country, UK ambassador to the United States. If you're just joining us, let me reiterate that Peter Mandelson failed his security vetting clearance. This is extraordinary. This is more than just misjudgment. This is ineptitude and it is corruption. It all happened on the watch of the Prime Minister. Now, it's not inconceivable that the Prime Minister could fall as a result of this. He's been under pressure because of the appointment of Peter Mandelson. Why? Well, because Peter Mandelson was well known to be a close friend of the disgraced paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Starmer knew this. Starmer told the House of Commons that he was very disappointed that he was lied to by Peter Mandelson. He said, I'm so sorry that I believed Peter Mandelson's lies. Now, that gave the impression that the Prime Minister had had a face-to-face conversation with Mandelson, because if someone says, I regret that I was lied to, well, then there would have been a conversation. It turns out that Starmer has not spoken to Mandelson prior to the appointment, did not speak to him once he'd been appointed, which was incredibly devious and dishonest. But now we hear that Number 10 and the Foreign Office overruled the security services who did not clear Mandelson for the top job. What more did they need to know about this guy? That he was a wrong 'un, that he'd had to resign from the cabinet twice because of allegations of corruption, which in one case was absolutely proven. A man that was caught just a few months ago urinating in the street after having had dinner with George Osborne. And now he fails a security vetting clearance and he gets the top job. Is this what probity looks like? The grown-ups back in charge? Is that the end of sleaze? It's not. It's the beginning of sleaze, which has happened under this Labour government on the watch of Sir Keir Starmer. This is an absolute scandal. The special relationship with America is critical. And they put someone in that job with links to Epstein, who it turns out that the authorities did not consider to be a safe and secure option for the top job. Folks, I'm having trouble